Good morning, everyone. Hopefully that gavel woke everyone up. I'd like to call this meeting of the Interim Committee on Natural Resources to order. Welcome to our fifth committee meeting in the 23-24 interim. For members who are joining us virtually, please be sure to keep your video on so that we know we have a quorum. Please also be sure to mute your microphone when you're not speaking in order to minimize background noise. And remember that the chat feature is only to be used for technical assistance from our fabulous broadcast and production services staff. At this time, can we please have the secretary call roll?
Senator Flores. Senator Goycochea.
Here.
Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod.
Here.
Assemblywoman Considine.
Present.
Assemblyman DeLong.
Present.
Assemblyman Gurr.
Here.
Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch. Chair Pazina.
Present. Please record that Assemblywoman Considine is serving as an alternate for our Vice Chair Anderson today, and Senator Flores will be here momentarily. Please mark him present when he arrives and is serving as an alternate for Senator Scheibel. And with that, our agenda today includes presentations on lithium mining and on wildlife crossings. As usual, before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone of a few housekeeping announcements. First, this committee is often paperless, meaning that materials will be provided electronically. Anyone who'd like to receive electronic notification of and access to the committee's agendas, minutes, and final report may do so by signing up on the Nevada Legislature's website. This means that committee members will review the meeting materials on their laptops. Please don't take this as a sign of inattention to your presentations. Second, a note to our presenters. All presenters are asked to make sure to turn on their microphone before they begin their presentation. If committee members have any questions during or after your presentation, please identify yourself each time you respond to a question. This assists our secretary in completing the minutes to the meeting. And third, a note about public comment. During the interim, meetings typically have two opportunities for public comment, once at the beginning and once at the end of the meeting. Members of the public may provide public comment in different ways, all of which have been listed on the agenda. Bless you. For anyone wishing to call in for public comment, please dial 888-475-4499. When prompted to provide the meeting ID, please enter 885-0796-8134 and then press pound. Broadcast and production services staff will indicate to you when it is your turn to speak. We ask that public comment made in person or by phone be kept to 2 minutes so that everyone interested in speaking may be accommodated and to ensure that we can get through the agenda in a timely fashion. Speakers are urged to avoid repetition of comments made by previous speakers. If you'd like to provide written comment, please either submit via email before, during, or after the meeting to nrinterim@lcb.state.nv.us, or please mail them to the Research Division at 401 South Carson Street, Carson City, Nevada, 89701. Or you can fax them to 775-684-6400. And with that, swimming along, we're going to move to item 2 on the agenda, public comment. That will be our first of 2 public comments for today. If there's anyone wishing to provide public comment here in Las Vegas, please come up to the table now. I don't see anyone running to the front in Vegas. If there's anyone in Carson City who'd like to make public comment, please head to the tables now. BPS, is there, I see someone coming to the table. Once we have those 2 speakers, BPS, be ready for the phones, and thank you.
Hi, good morning to the committee. My name is Cassandra Lisenby. I'm the Outreach and Just Energy Transition Director for Great Basin Resource Watch. Our organization works with communities to protect their land, air, water from the harms of mining and extraction throughout the Great Basin. You're going to hear a lot today about lithium mining, the uses, the virtues, and the development of a lithium economy, but it's really important to understand that mining is damaging to the environment and also very disruptive to communities. Mining is also a significant driver of climate change. with a UN International Resource Panel showing that annually the extraction of metals and minerals has risen significantly to account for approximately 20% of climate impacts. Because of mining and its damage and legacies of pollution, it is imperative that we are judicious and careful when permitting new mines. This is not what we have witnessed with the Thacker Pass mine, nor with the Rhyolite Ridge process. It's dangerous to relax the standards that we do have in mine permitting, and if more mining is going to be coming to the state, we ask to increase better standards and protections for both our human and non-human communities throughout the Great Basin. We cannot allow the end use of a mineral to affect the rigor of our analysis and to streamline our permitting process. Only if we fully understand what damage is possible with a proposed mine can we then develop plans to address those damages. We must also recognize that mines disproportionately affect certain communities, and the development of mines is inherently an environmental justice concern. Directly affected and disproportionately affected communities have the right to know how a mine is expected to affect them and have access to resources to be able to evaluate the mine plan and what that will mean for their community. Thank you for keeping this in consideration today.
Thank you. And I was remiss in not asking everyone to say and spell their name before speaking. So could you please spell your name for us for the record as well? And thank you.
Absolutely. It's Cassandra, Kassandra. Last name Lisenbee, Lisenbee.
Thank you very much. We'll go to our next speaker in Carson City.
Denny French, DENIFRENCH, and I couldn't have picked a better time to be a gentleman. I'd say ditto to everything Ms. Lizine just said. Much more educated version of what I would say. I think we're short-sighted on our considerations towards lithium in our attempt to save ourselves. We're actually, I think, going to do the exact opposite, and I think we're going to compound the issues really quicker than we needed to. I feel that the mines have been a benefit to this community in Carson because of the taxes they pay and for the minerals that they have brought to our abilities to have and our necessity to have. I really also feel that the people impacted, several of the tribes and such, will have, I hope, presentations to relieve their need to be able to relate to the situation. But I myself, as a Carson City resident, feel lithium is a short-sighted situation, and the impact will be devastating. Thank you very much.
All right. I believe we had one more speaker approach the table in Carson City.
Thank you, Senator. Chair Pazina and Interim Natural Resources, for the record, my name is Olivia Tanager. That's OLIVIATANAGER, and I'm the Executive Director of the Sierra Club Toyabe Chapter. The Toyabe Chapter believes that we all have the right to a livable planet and that our kids and our kids' kids deserve the best shot we can give them at addressing the climate crisis. We also strongly believe that ecosystems across the Great Basin need to be held to the highest standards of protection. Nevadans recognize as much as anyone, if not more, the stakes of the climate crisis. A new Associated Press report that I read yesterday showed that 226 people died in Nevada last year due to extreme heat. We need to transition away from fossil fuels for the sake of Nevadans and people across the world, but we should not and cannot transition at the expense of our ecosystems and our communities. We strongly believe that consultation with Native communities to avoid extraction in sacred areas is of paramount importance, especially as the energy transition ramps up here in Nevada. We must identify low-conflict areas and low-conflict ways of extracting things like lithium. Direct lithium extraction, or DLE, is a substantially better way to obtain lithium, especially for a water-starved state like Nevada. By avoiding large open pits or evaporation, basins would be able to keep much more of their own water, and the footprint of the project would be minimized. It's my hope that this committee will do everything possible to limit the harm to communities across the state from the mining industry and ensure that DLE is seen as the preferred method of obtaining lithium and is regulated appropriately. Thank you for all you do as caretakers of our beautiful state.
Thank you very much. And with that, BPS, we will go to the phones. Do we have anyone on the phones wishing to speak during our first section of public comment?
Thank you, Chair. The public lines are open and working. However, there are no callers to offer public comment at this time.
All right. Thank you very much. With that, we will close item number 2 on the agenda, our first section of public comment. And I would remind everyone we do have public comment again at the end of the meeting. With that, let's move to item number 3, appointment of members to the Subcommittee on Public Lands. The Intertribal Council of Nevada has recommended Marissa Weaselboy to serve as the tribal representative to the Subcommittee on Public Lands. Her qualifications are quite impressive, and we very much appreciate the ITCN's effort to secure a recommendation. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and officially appoint Ms. Weaselboy to serve as the tribal representative to the Subcommittee on Public Lands, and we thank you so much in advance for your service. The ITCN resolution containing this recommendation and Ms. Weaselboy's CV will be available on the legislative website, and the next meeting of the subcommittee will be on Friday, July 12th in Eureka. And we welcome our new representative to the subcommittee. And with that, that closes item number 3 on the agenda, and we move to item number 4. With that, we will begin our presentations today. Item number 4, a presentation on concerns related to lithium development near Ash Meadows National Wildlife Refuge. For our presentation, we'll hear from presenters Mason Vale, Executive Director of the Amargosa Conservancy, Carolyn Allen, Chair of the Amargosa Valley Town Board, and Mandy Campbell, Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, representing the Timbisha Shoshone Tribe. We thank you so much for joining us here in Las Vegas as well as over Zoom, and we ask that you please begin when you're ready and introduce yourselves and spell your names for the record.
Good morning. My name is Mason Vale. It's Masonvoehl. Thank you to the committee for this opportunity to speak during today's hearing. I'm a Las Vegas resident and the executive director of the Amargosa Conservancy. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization working in the Amargosa River watershed of western Nevada and eastern California. The issue we wish to address this morning concerns proposed and potential mining activities near Ash Meadows National Wildlife Refuge, Death Valley National Park, and Amargosa Valley, and the ongoing effort to secure enhanced safeguards for groundwater-dependent communities in this extraordinary landscape in southern Nevada. Ash Meadows is a designated wildlife refuge celebrating its 40th anniversary of protection this year. It is the largest remaining oasis in the Mojave Desert. It is home to at least 26 species that live nowhere else in the world. Ash Meadows is an internationally renowned and recognized biodiversity hotspot by the Ramsar Convention. And within the boundaries of Ash Meadows is a disjunct portion of Death Valley National Park, which contains the Devil's Hole and Devil's Hole pupfish, the most endangered fish species on Earth. Ash Meadows is located in the heart of the Amargosa River watershed. The Amargosa River is a groundwater river running for 185 miles through one of the hottest and driest deserts on Earth. In addition to supporting incredible biodiversity, the Amargosa River supports communities and economies for some 40,000 people, some of whom you will hear from today. Concerns for Ash Meadows and the surrounding communities has heightened significantly in the last year due to increased interest in mineral exploration and extraction in the Amargosa Desert, with specific interests surrounding potential lithium mining in the region. In the summer of 2023, a Canadian mining company called Rover Critical Minerals had proposed a exploratory drilling project on lands managed by the Bureau of Land Management in very close proximity to Ash Meadows, posing potential impacts to groundwater which sustains springs and wetlands within the refuge and had the potential of impacting local water rights holders in Amargosa Valley. This map here depicts that project with the red icons illustrating their proposed borehole locations, some of which were within just a few thousand feet of some of the largest and most significant springs in the refuge. While the exploration itself poses significant threats to this fragile ecosystem, of greatest concern is that this project could pave a path toward the creation of what could be an open pit mine next to one of the crown jewels of southern Nevada. And this is actually a depiction put out by the mining company showing a mine of several square miles actually extending into the refuge itself. A diverse coalition of tribes, nonprofit partners, and local governments has banded together to push back against the permitting of this project. And ultimately, last summer, the BLM rescinded their approval of that initial project on July 17th, 2023. Despite strong opposition and in the face of hydrological analyses that have demonstrated the real potential for groundwater resources to be drastically and permanently impacted by mining exploration activities, Rover Metals has continued to seek approval for their drilling near Ash Meadows, and in just recent months has staked as many as 400 new mining claims spanning 8,000 acres near the town of Amargosa Valley. Some of these new mining claims are staked literally across the street from people's homes and businesses in the community. This new claim area also sits atop an established groundwater flow path that sustains both the Amargosa Valley community in Nevada, Timbisha-Shoshone Tribe's sovereign community in Furnace Creek, California, and springs and wetlands within Death Valley National Park. In light of the grave concerns over the future of their water security, as well as the potential impacts to wildlife and natural resources in iconic landscapes of Ash Meadows, Death Valley, and the Amargosa River, our coalition is seeking urgent action from the Department of the Interior and Congress to protect this portion of Nevada from the harms of new mining through a mineral withdrawal process. And a mineral withdrawal is a process through which a specific defined area of federally owned public lands are temporarily or permanently withdrawn from new mineral entry. That means no new mining claims can be filed in a withdrawn area. And this is typically done to protect certain values, such as environmental, cultural, or recreational interests, which clearly we have in abundance in this location. A mineral withdrawal process would, as I said, withdraw a defined area of public lands from new mineral entry with valid existing rights and operations retained. This action has garnered significant support in recent months from the Timbisha-Shoshone Tribe, the Nye County Board of County Commissioners, the Nye County Water District, Amargosa Valley Town Board, Beatty Town Advisory Board, 25 nonprofit partners, and 1,100 individuals living in the region. This is a map depicting our study area. This is a draft map. I want to emphasize again that a mineral withdrawal action only is pertaining to federal lands, does not impact private lands. We look forward in the coming months to working with members of both our state and federal delegations and with relevant state and federal agencies to undertake this mineral withdrawal process urgently. And this action is absolutely necessary to ensure that the diverse communities of life and water rights holders in Amargosa Valley and downstream communities are safeguarded and afforded a real chance to flourish into the deep future. And with that, I would like to turn it over to my co-presenter, Mandy Campbell, who's the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer with the Timbisha-Shoshone Tribe.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you so much.
My name is Mandy Campbell. I'm a member as well as the Timbisha-Shoshone Tribal TIPO. I've lived in Death Valley almost all my life. Ash Meadows is a very special place to myself, my family, my ancestors. My ancestors always traveled there, and many tribes traveled there actually for ceremonies. The water there is healing. So, they did healing ceremonies. They, the food, the vegetation there, they gathered food. It was just a place where all tribes gathered together. So it always was a special place to all of us. The vegetation, the habitat alone there is, the water they live in is special. It's a very healing water, and it's very, the habitat and the vegetation really they survive there, and a lot of them will not survive someplace else. That's what makes Ash Meadows so special. As our people, my people have been, going to Ash Meadows, our history's in layers. It isn't only on top of the surface. They've been there for years, and the story keeps coming and coming. My auntie and them, she's 99 years old, has been going there all her life. And as myself as a kid, my parents watching my elders and my auntie and all them going there to take healing baths, we never were taught to disrespect that area. We were never taught to, destroy the earth the way that this lithium mine wants to come into this unusual place and it's going to end up killing the habitat. It's going to end up killing the vegetation. I mean, what's going to happen in years to come when that they say now that they're going to adapt. Are they going to really adapt in 5 years down the road? Is everything going to be able to still survive there? I mean, we need ash meadows to survive. The animals, the everything is everything's alive there, and we all need each other, especially for that healing water to work the way it does. It's beautiful there, and it's our home. And our people have always just believed that you don't destroy the earth and the homes, and it's so close to where we are, and it's on top of the aquifers that come here to Death Valley. What's going to happen if they make a mistake? Just one mistake is all it takes, and then there goes more vegetation we lose. There goes more, is there a possibility that we lose the water here in Death Valley as well? Look at the pupfish. One lady told me one time, the pupfish are going to save ash meadows, but you can't find certain pupfish anyplace else. Where else in the world? I mean, I'm sure there's places, but Death Valley is known to be so dry. And then we have a storm and the Amargosa pops out of nowhere and you have a river flowing through. And like I said before, that river isn't just a river, it's a healing river. The water, from underneath, from the aquifers is finally full, and it's a healing river. And, it's Death Valley is, it's special. Like I said, I think to me, going there as a kid all my life, I would hate to see something so beautiful destroyed when there's other places that it could go. Other places where there isn't so much habitat, there isn't so much vegetation, and there isn't a place where they have to destroy the aquifer that travels so far. Goes through Shoshone, it goes through down to Tacopa, it goes through China Ranch and back around down here to Badwater. It's and our people, my people, they know where all the springs and all the aquifers are and everything, and they've went to all these spots. And once this happens, it's going to start draining it, and then what's going to be out there? I mean, there's areas you can go where we used to sit as kids. My aunties used to take us, and there's waterfalls out there. Are those waterfalls still going to be there? Are those special ceremonial places that we went, is it still going to be the same? Because they want to bring in these lithium mines, or they want to bring in these different mines and destroy our home? And like I said, I understand that they have to have lithium, but does it have to be here? There's tons of other places that they can take it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Campbell. Did you have another presenter?
Yes, I would like to present Carolyn Allen. Carolyn is the chair of the Amargosa Valley Town Board.
Thank you, Mason. Good morning. My name is Carolyn Allen, Carolyn Allen. I'm the Amargosa Valley Town Board Chair. Thank you for having us this morning. Amargosa is home to ash meadows, excuse me, I forgot one very important endangered species, the people of the town of Amargosa. What brought us here initially is ash meadows.
Hey, Carolyn, if you can hear us, it might be worth turning off your video just so that your connection is a little bit stronger.
Miss Allen, I'm not certain if you're on mute or if there's just a challenge with your connection over Zoom, but as Mr. Vail just said, ensure that you're not on mute and maybe turn that camera off. Thank you. Mr. Vail, it looks like we just lost Miss Allen's connection entirely. We'll give her a couple more seconds to come back, but we do need to proceed with the meeting. So we'll give her just a moment and see if BPS is able to get her back.
Sounds good. Hey, Carolyn, we have you back, but I think you're on mute, and it may be worth turning off your video so that your connection's a little bit stronger.
Okay, hang on just a second. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, Miss Allen, please proceed.
Okay, all right, thank you. Amargosa Valley is home to ash meadows, big dune, the devil's hole pupfish, and 11 other threatened or endangered species. Oh, excuse me, I forgot one very important endangered species, the people of the town of Amargosa. What brought us here initially is ash meadows, with its unique biodiversity and stunning landscapes, is not only a natural wonder, but also an essential sanctuary for countless species of plants and animals, some of which are found nowhere else on Earth. It is a place of immense ecological significance and a source of pride for our community and our nation. Recent proposals to initiate lithium mining in the vicinity of ash meadows and the potential environmental consequences of mining in this area cannot be overstated. Amargosa is not against mining. Let me state that clearly. But lithium extraction processes, particularly those involving open pit mining and the use of chemicals, can lead to irreversible damage to the land, water, and wildlife in the region. The disruption of groundwater systems, contamination of aquifers, and destruction of habitats would not only endanger the unique species that call ash meadows home, but also jeopardize the livelihoods and the lives of the people of Amargosa. This includes our local community members, the Timbisha-Shoshone tribe, who rely on the land for their sustenance and economic well-being. Moreover, the tourism industry, which plays a significant role in our local economy, would suffer immensely if the pristine beauty of ash meadows is compromised by mining. Many businesses in our area and Nye County depend on tourism. Visitors come from all over the world to experience the natural splendor of our valley, as well as Death Valley National Park. Any harm to ash meadows would not only diminish the appeal as a tourist destination, but also undermine the conservation efforts and investments we have made to preserve this invaluable resource. Now, of equal importance is the town of Amargosa and its people. Rural and remote, Amargosa is 95% BLM land which was mandated for renewable energy. With its irradiated sun and flat, wide open landscape, Amargosa became ground zero for 3 new transmission lines and 15 commercial solar projects to help fulfill the commitment to move forward with renewable energy. Imagine 50,000 acres of solar panels in a town only 16 miles long north to south. When these maps and plans were created, did anyone think there were people living here that loved and valued their way of life? After all, we are situated in a desert flanked by the Funeral Mountains, bordered by Death Valley National Park to the west, the Nevada National Security Site to the north, Yucca Mountain to the northwest, Ash Meadows to the east, and Tacopa to the south. It's an area needing to conserve water in order to survive. Amargosa has wells going dry that were initially 90 feet deep, now needing to be drilled as deep as 300 to 500 feet. Low incomes, high unemployment, water issues, limited services, and volunteer emergency services. And those services are servicing 42 miles of Highway 95, trying to keep us travelers and us safe. We are fighting to enhance much needed services to support and maintain our lifestyle and simply to survive. The population of Amargosa, 1,430, is a low-income community which houses Ponderosa Dairy, Long Street Hotel and Casino, 2 small stores, and a restaurant. The dairy, which employs 80% of the working population and 45% of the students at the local school, is currently planning to sell to a solar company and to close. The school will then close, and solar projects require more water and create no permanent jobs. We need to create a solution as a town to make more jobs available, but lithium mining here is not the answer. Lithium mining in Amargosa signals the creation of another ghost town for Nevada, a death sentence for Amargosa, Ash Meadows, and Death Valley National Park, one of our treasures. As stewards of our state's natural heritage, I urge you to take decisive action to protect Ash Meadows, the people of Amargosa, the tribes, and the surrounding communities from threats posed by mining, lithium mining, to be exact. I ask that you too support legislation and policies that safeguard this area for future generations to appreciate and enjoy. The town of Amargosa and our partners here today, thank you for your attention to this matter. Thank you.
I'm gonna get on with Stephanie. She's the chair. She's the police.
Thank you so much. At this time, we'd like to open it up for questions. And I believe we have some up north, and then we'll come back down to the south with any questions. We'll start with Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch and then move on to Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you all for presenting on this critical issue this morning. So my question is about that mineral withdrawal application. I'm just wondering where that is in the process, what steps are being taken, and what still needs to be taken.
Yes, I'm happy to respond to that. So a mineral withdrawal can be executed in two different ways.
Mr. Vail, please
Yes.
give us your name for the record.
Mason Vail, Voehl. So a mineral withdrawal process can unfold in two ways. There is a legislative path, so Congress could actually introduce legislation requesting this action. There's also an administrative path, so that power resides within the Secretary of the Interior. Typically, that is conducted through an application process. The managing federal agency, or agencies plural, would conjointly issue a petition to the Secretary of the Interior calling on her to consider this area for this action. Should she decide to do that, there would be a NEPA process conducted, the National Environmental Policy Act. That would be an EIS, and so this process would go in front of the public for input, scoping, and further consideration. Currently, we are just in the process of really establishing both the support for this action at the local level in the communities and developing the science needed to really robustly support this action. And our partners, the Nature Conservancy, have contracted a really important hydrological analysis that really demonstrates a profound need for this action. That's included in your backup materials. So currently, we are working with our local communities to firmly establish the analysis area we want to see analyzed by the agencies. And we are working also with our Nevada congressional delegation, seeking their support for this action as well.
Chair, may I have a brief follow-up?
Yes.
So to clarify, it sounds like right now the application is in process and you're in the process of gathering support, which doesn't sound like it's largely a legislative issue. Obviously, it's not going to work through our chambers. So how can we help? Would it help for the committee to have a letter of support? Does it help just having this discussion? What are you looking for in terms of support from us?
Yes, I do believe that a letter of support in the future from the committee would be meaningful in really demonstrating the state's commitment to really, especially respecting and upholding the community's concerns in this case. I think it's remarkable to look at the coalition behind this effort. It's really not just an environmental issue, as you heard today from our local community members. This is really significant to the state and to the county, of course. So I think a letter from the committee would be very meaningful in illustrating the support at the state level for this action.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. With that, we'll move on to Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. I have a couple of questions. First off, thank you very much for the presentations. It's good to understand what everyone's concerns are for the area. What I'd like to do is ask a few questions, just trying to understand what's actually going on down in the Ash Meadows area. First off, it sounds like the Ash Meadows area and the wildlife, I think it's a wildlife refuge, is primarily of concern because you've got groundwater near the surface, which is supporting a number of species. So it's really, we've got groundwater that's supporting the species. Is that correct? So, okay, thank you. That's helpful. Has Rover conducted any exploration drilling yet?
As of today, they have not yet done any exploratory drilling. They've only done surface sampling.
Please identify yourself for the
Apologies.
record. Thank you.
Mason Vale, VOEHL. As of today, Rover has not conducted any exploratory drilling, just surface sampling activities.
Do they have any permits to do exploration?
Not currently. So last summer in 2023.
And once again, that's Mason
Vale. Apologies. Got to get in the habit of that.
And then, Mr. Vale,
submitted
one more question then. Have any applications been filed for a lithium mine in that area?
As of today, Mason Vale, as of today, only exploratory drilling permits have been filed. None have been accepted or gone through the NEPA process.
Okay, and then one last question. Does the existing clay mine next to the Ash Meadows area affect the species in that area or the groundwater?
Mason Vale. No, in honesty, that it's a very different type of mining that is being conducted by the Loist operation. It's very surface level clay stone scraping. So it's a different caliber of mine that's been proposed than has been proposed by other companies. There is still a question as to whether there are significant impacts, but because they're staying largely above the groundwater table, it doesn't seem that it's having a profound effect on the refuge.
You're implying that we know what the type of mining that's going to occur by Rover if they do file applications. Do you know that they're actually mining below the groundwater?
Based on what they have, Mason Vale, based on what they have shared with their investors and through their communications, and including that open pit depiction on their website, they suggest that there is a path following exploratory drilling to that depth of 350 feet for an open pit mine creation of a similar depth. So we're inferring from their communications to their investors at this time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any questions here in Las Vegas? Okay, I have one question, and then, well, thank you so much for your presentation. In regards to direct lithium extraction, is that something that the Amargosa Conservancy or the town or the tribe have had any discussions on?
Mason Vale. Yes, I think this is something across the whole Mojave that we're paying attention to. It's worth noting, DLE, direct lithium extraction, is an incredibly new and largely untested form of extraction. We still have very serious concerns over what DLE how the impact that could register on a groundwater table that is so sensitive. Even though this technology promises to do a reinjection model, the hydrology in the Amargosa Basin is extremely sophisticated, very sensitive to change. Even diverting water from one channel to another can have significant impacts downstream. So we would be extremely concerned about a DLE project in any close vicinity to the refuge, or really within Basin 230 at this time.
Okay. Seeing no further questions here in Las Vegas or up in Carson City.
Chair, I have a follow-up, if I may. This is
Yes.
Assemblyman DeLong. Just since DLE came up, I'd just like to confirm, based on what was previously said about the fact that it'd be an open pit mine, that implies that they're mining rock to extract the lithium, not pump groundwater to extract the lithium. So DLE would not be applicable in this situation. Is that consistent with what you were previously saying?
Mason Vale. Yes, so the company has advertised a claystone operation which would utilize a heap leach method of extraction on that claystone deposit. Because of the depths they've advertised of their open pit, that operation would require significant dewatering of really basically overcoming the head needed to sustain springs within the refuge in order to access that ore. So DLE here is not on the table. However, the open pit mine would require significant dewatering as part of its operation.
Assembly DeLong, any follow-up?
Chair, not at this point. As far as it relates to permitting a mine, I think we've got other discussions coming up later in this meeting that I think will illuminate the fact that there is extensive environmental evaluation that occurs before a mining operation would happen that I think would alleviate a number of people's concerns. But I think we'll see where that goes later on in this meeting.
Okay, not seeing any questions from Assemblyman Gurr at this time either. We are going to thank you and your team so much and close out item number 4 on the agenda. All right, that brings us to item number 5 on the agenda, which is presentations on studies and concerns related to lithium and critical mineral mining in Nevada. I would say that the Nature Conservancy and the Center for Biological Diversity did approach separately with different presentations, but we felt that it was a good fit under one agenda item to keep our meeting moving. So with that, I'm going to say first up is Mauricia Baca, Nevada State Director of the Nature Conservancy, who'll be giving opening remarks from Las Vegas. Then we'll hear from Patrick Donnelly, Great Basin Director with the Center for Biological Diversity, followed by a presentation from Jana Moan, External Affairs Director with the Nature Conservancy, and Mickey Hazelwood, Nevada Conservation Director, also with the Nature Conservancy. Please make sure your microphone is on, and thank you.
Aha, now I believe it is on. Chair Pazina, members of the Interim Natural Resources Committee, my name is Mauricia Baca, M-A-U-R-I-C-I-A, B as in boy, A-C-A for the record, and I'm the State Director for the Nature Conservancy in Nevada. We commend you, Chair Pazina, and the committee for hearing presentations about the lithium development life cycle at this meeting. We especially appreciate that you included an agenda item dedicated to the environmental concerns and needs in the context of lithium extraction and development in Nevada. Thank you for hearing a presentation about the proposed lithium exploration at the border of Ash Meadows National Wildlife Refuge as well. TNC is deeply invested in the conservation of that place. 40 years ago, the Nature Conservancy deeded that property to the Fish and Wildlife Service. We have recently provided scientific analysis to understand the potential impacts of lithium development in that area, and the analysis found that they are significant. Indeed, even from exploratory drilling, there could have been catastrophic consequences to the aquifer. Ash Meadows is quite possibly the highest conflict area in the state where one could explore for lithium. I want to be clear that this topic is not intended to be critical of any one particular mine or the mining industry. The Nature Conservancy looks towards solutions where humans and nature thrive. We recognize that to evolve our economy and address climate change, there is a need for mining to provide lithium and other critical minerals. Alongside the climate crisis, there is also a biodiversity crisis. The Nature Conservancy is a science-based organization that strives to find the balance for humans and for nature. It is our goal, our desire and goal, that this extraction and development proceed with the least amount of conflict with environmental and cultural resources and communities as possible. To do that, we feel we must understand what those conflicts are and what they might be so that we can avoid them up front. This is not only better for nature and communities, it is also the most cost-effective solution for projects. It is a critical time for Nevada's economic and energy future. We are at the cusp of an upward momentum for development of lithium and other critical minerals. But unlike energy transitions of the past, we can enter into this transition informed by the wisdom we've all gained from past mistakes. It is important that we get this right. Or, as we like to think of it, that we are smart from the start as we move into this new energy future. You will hear two presentations today by two different organizations on this agenda item, one from the Center for Biological Diversity and the second from the Nature Conservancy. First, Patrick Donnelly from the Center for Biological Diversity will share a presentation about permitting for direct lithium extraction. His presentation will be followed by one from our Nevada External Affairs Director, Jana Moan, who will present about research that TNC scientists and our partners have done to understand the potential impacts to biodiversity from proposed lithium extraction. Thank you again, Chair Pazina and the committee, for your attention today. With that, I will turn this over to Patrick Donnelly for the first presentation.
Thank you, Chair Pazina, members of the committee, and thank you to the chair for scheduling, Patrick Donnelly for the record, D-O-N-N-E-L-L-Y, and thank you, Chair Pazina, for scheduling this meeting today for this really important topic. You'll have to forgive me for the rather embarrassing typo on my original slide here. I guess I typed the word extinction so much that I substituted it in, but this is a presentation on direct lithium extraction, DLE. To preface, the climate crisis is an existential crisis for humanity and for biodiversity, and the Center for Biological Diversity supports electric vehicles as a tool to decarbonize our economy. And as a result, that means we support lithium extraction. Whether it's mining or other techniques, we implicitly support more lithium. And, we have made a mark for ourselves, obviously fighting some lithium mines, but we are actively in search of lithium that can help us achieve those goals while minimizing impacts on the environment. And we believe DLE is a step in the right direction. However, under the current set of permitting regimes, we feel the state is not quite ready for the rush of DLE projects, and that's what I'm going to present on today. So just a little background on DLE. Traditionally, lithium is produced in two ways, either hard rock mining or brine evaporation. DLE is an emerging class of technologies which aims to directly remove lithium from brine without evaporating the water off. So Nevada's only existing lithium production site is the Silver Peak site in Clayton Valley, where they evaporate brine and then harvest the lithium from the remaining minerals. DLE would accomplish a similar thing of extracting the lithium from those brines, but without the evaporation. It uses physical, chemical, or electrical processes, or some combination thereof, to extract the lithium. Those technologies are proprietary, and there's a number of them floating around out there. So I'm not sure the market has settled on technologies that will be industry standard, but as I said, this is an emerging sector of the extraction industry. There are many pilots around the world, several in South America, and there's one in Nevada that I'm aware of in Clayton Valley, which recently began producing lithium on a pilot scale, as I understand. But there are 0 commercial-scale DLE projects globally. So this is very much an emerging technology, and I think the state of Nevada still has a chance to wrap its arms around it. DLE targets mineral-laden brines, almost always under dry lake beds, playas, in the desert Southwest. So it's not just Nevada. There are also DLE proposals in Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. Generally, the technology is fairly straightforward. You pump the brine, you extract the lithium through the complex technological processes, and then you re-inject the spent brine back into the aquifer. Some DLE projects do consume fresh groundwater, which is important to note that it is not a completely water-neutral process. However, because these technologies are emerging, we're not really sure what that water consumption looks like. It really varies from proposal to proposal. And the major question which needs answering in those cases is, what is the connection between the brine and freshwater aquifers, given that freshwater aquifers are what creates habitat, biodiversity, as well as sustaining our communities? But DLE holds promise. It may have a lower environmental footprint than other forms of lithium production. So there's no significant earth moving or open pits. A DLE project would be a well field and a kind of factory-sized building where the extraction would happen. So it's a very different thing than an open pit mine. They would consume far less water than evaporation projects. And as a result of all this, the land footprint is dramatically smaller. So DLE, if regulated and cited in a thoughtful way, may be a rapid way to increase lithium production in Nevada while limiting environmental impacts compared to other production methods. There are 38 proposed brine projects in Nevada that I'm tracking. All are assumed to be DLE. That is not actually known in all cases because they are targeting brines. However, folks in industry who I've spoken to say that more brine projects, brine evaporation projects, are unlikely because they're just not as economical as potentially a DLE project would be. If DLE gets unlocked, it could really change the whole economy of extracting lithium because of potentially a lower cost of extraction. All projects proposed in Nevada thus far are on playas or dry lake beds, particularly in Esmeralda, Nye, and Mineral counties, but also in Churchill, Washoe, Clark, and other counties. And again, there's that one pilot project that I'm aware of. So the problem is there's really no regulatory framework in place for DLE. A DLE project, as I said, it's a well field and it's a factory-sized building where the extraction happens. It's not a mine. It's sort of inaccurate to call a DLE project a mine, really, because a mine is a fundamentally different thing. And so mining regulatory frameworks really don't apply to the unique challenges and uncertainties that we need to account for when permitting a DLE project. That means there's regulatory uncertainty right now. That could cause project delays, that could cause high risk to investment, and thus slowed investment when compared to other types of lithium extraction. This has resulted in numerous contested water rights cases across the state. In particular, in Clayton Valley, there's multiple lawsuits going on, and elsewhere in the state as well, at least partially because the uncertainty inherent in trying to fit a square peg into a round hole with lithium extraction going into our current regulatory regime, it doesn't work. And so while this technology could become a dominant player in the lithium market, Nevada's regulatory structure really isn't ready to accommodate it. So the most significant regulatory gap around DLE is non-consumptive use. So fundamentally, a DLE project involves pumping and re-injecting water, which theoretically is non-consumptive or largely non-consumptive. However, it could alter the availability of surface water or groundwater resources. And the only real corollary we have is geothermal energy, which is very similar if you think about it. You pump hot water, you extract heat from it, and you re-inject that water, at least in a binary cycle geothermal plant. And it is known from experience that some geothermal projects have affected surface water resources. This is because you're pumping and re-injecting vast amounts of water. Tens of thousands of acre feet are being pumped and re-injected through aquifers. And aquifers are very complex systems with pressure and temperature gradients and other factors, faulting, that cause springs and wetlands and surface water expression of groundwater. It's a very complex system. And pumping and re-injecting that vast amount of water can alter the aquifer dynamics, the pressure gradients, and then change the availability of surface and groundwater potentially. So the big question is, how will non-consumptive groundwater pumping and re-injection at high volumes affect the availability of surface water resources and groundwater levels? And I will say that this is extremely context dependent. Every basin in the state has different geology and different hydrology. And so there's no blanket statement about how DLE might affect aquifers. It's really very contingent on the science. Nevada has no established statutory framework for regulating non-consumptive use. We have water rights applications, which are for consuming groundwater. Certainly the pumping and re-injection is regulated as far as the well drilling is concerned. There are permits for well drilling, but the actual act of that pumping and re-injection really isn't accommodated for in current statute. And it's fundamentally different than an appropriation of groundwater as we think of it. And it's also fundamentally different from our current framework for appropriating water for mining. Mining has certain types of appropriation within statute, but again, they don't really apply to this idea of pumping and re-injecting water through an aquifer in the same way. And so really, we need a different regulatory regime for non-consumptive pumping and re-injection. There's also a few other regulatory gaps that we need to be considering. Reclamation standards are going to be very different from a DLE project as opposed to an open pit mine. The solid waste stream that is generated when you extract lithium through DLE, you're not just extracting lithium, you're going to get a number of minerals, and that's going to generate a solid waste stream. That may need its own type of regulation. Is brine evaporation still a beneficial use of water? If there are other ways to produce lithium without evaporating that water off, I think we need to consider whether that is still the best use of that water resource when there's other technology available that obviates the need to permanently withdraw that water from the aquifers. So there's a number of approaches that this committee and the legislature as a whole could take to start addressing this issue. One would be to establish a committee and fund a study to investigate regulatory changes to accommodate DLE permitting, and then provide those recommendations before the 2027 legislative session. Another approach would be to dive right in and get regulatory changes going in a bill in the 2025 session. I think it's really important to note that, none of this is going to work if it's the Center for Biological Diversity's permitting regime, and that's not what we're proposing. This needs to be done in concert with industry. It needs to be done in concert with the tribes in Nevada, with local communities, the scientists who are doing the science on this, all the stakeholders. And so, certainly it's possible to dive right into this in the 2025 session, but it would take a lot of legwork between now and session to find something that's amenable to everybody, because ultimately, we need something that will protect the environment and communities, but also accommodate industry producing the lithium that we know we need. And so it's going to take a lot of parties coming together, even if they have historically been on opposite sides of issues. So those are some steps that this committee could take, and I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you so much. At this time, does anyone here in Southern Nevada have any questions for Mr. Donnelly? Okay, we do have one up north. So Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. Patrick, thanks for that discussion on DLE. I think pretty accurate about how it works, which is good. I guess the questions I have are you saying that anyone could pump groundwater without consuming it, without getting a permit?
Thank you, Assemblyman Patrick Donnelly, for the record. There are a number of permits which would be involved, like well drilling permits, which has to do with the technical aspects of the well, the casing diameter, the
Thinking groundwater rights.
Yeah, there are no groundwater rights needed for pumping and re-injecting water.
So why is every mining operation in the state that's penetrating the groundwater table with their pit getting a water right from the state engineer to pump that water and requiring them to re-infiltrate that into the basin?
Thank you, Assemblyman Patrick Donnelly, for the record. As I understand it, mine dewatering is regulated under mining statutes, and I see you shaking your head, and I'd be interested in being edified by you either at this moment or in the future.
The state engineer absolutely regulates the pumping and management of non-consumptive use of water.
May I reply?
Fine with me.
Thank you, Patrick Donnelly, for the record. My experience with this, again, there's a good corollary with geothermal energy, and at least with geothermal energy projects, there is no required water rights application for pumping and re-injecting water.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. We have a question down here south as well. Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I just had a clarification. I was trying to take notes. You said the DLE, obviously it's an emerging technology, but is it happening in the United States at all, or is it all just, I think you talked about a pilot program. Could you I'm trying to, since we're tasked with either coming up with a study or going in with regulations, I mean, is there a possibility that there are some best practices out there, or, are we all just kind of trying to figure this out? And which obviously it sounds like we need to figure this out, both from an environmental standpoint and also economic development of the state. So, if it were up to you, I guess those clarifications and where would we look?
Thank you, Patrick Donnelly, for the record. Nevada is certainly ground zero for the emergence of the DLE economy in the United States. As I said, there's 38 projects proposed here. There's a half dozen proposed between Arizona and New Mexico. None are operational right now. Many are in exploration, drilling test wells, sampling brines. There is one pilot project in Clayton Valley from Schlumberger, SLB. I believe that project is in operation now, producing at a very limited pilot scale. There are pilots in South America, in the Lithium Triangle there, I believe in Bolivia. But there are no known commercial scale DLE projects globally yet. So this would definitely be Nevada getting ahead of the curve. I'm not sure there really is an existing regulatory regime to plug into, so to speak. So that's why this is pretty tricky, because I think this type of regulation, again, to provide certainty, to de-risk investment, would be groundbreaking, I believe.
Thank you so much. I believe we had another question up north from Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for presenting on what I think is a promising new technology, and I'm eager to learn more. I just want to get some clarification on the state water engineer and the water rights and the non-consumptive use. Obviously, DLE is very new. It's not at commercial scale, so we don't necessarily have those examples. But as you said, we do have geothermal. And I just want to clarify, there are permits involved, obviously, with any project, but the process is not necessarily the same as an open pit mine and with the water rights. Is that correct?
Patrick Townley, for the record, yes. As we understand it, it would be a separate regulatory process because it's really a different set of activities that are undergoing than an open pit mine.
Okay, and just to follow up, if I may, Chair, I've had conversations with the state water engineer where people in communities near geothermal plants have been concerned because there might be effects on the groundwater, and he stated to me there's not much he can do because he doesn't really have oversight of non-consumptive use. Is that in line with what you have seen with conversations with him and with those kind of projects?
Thank you, Patrick Donnelly, for the record. That is what I understand. I'm certainly wanting to have a discussion with Assemblyman DeLong to understand more about the interaction between that and existing mining regulation. Like I said, this is a little bit of a gray area right now, and so I think these types of discussions to understand, the current regime and what improvements could be made, I think that's really important right now.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. One last question from Senator Gokachia.
Thank you. And I think we're really kind of confusing this. Clearly, boreholes is not regulated to the level that in statute that i.e. a well is. And clearly, but if you're going to sink a well, the state engineer does have the authority. And if you're going to pump water from that well, now borehole is a little different scenario, and clearly that's established differently. So under the law, I think we've got some protection when you start talking about actually drilling a well and pumping water and re-injecting it. And again, mining definitely has to do that. Although, as Patrick said, the jury's still out. This is a new process. We don't even know if it's going to work. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the great questions. Thank you so much for the interesting presentation, Mr. Donnelly. And with that, we are going to move to the next part of number 5 on the agenda, which will be a presentation by Ms. Moan as well as Mickey Hazelwood. Thank you very much.
Chair Pezzina and members of the committee, my name is Jana Moan, and I'm the External Affairs Director for the Nature Conservancy in Nevada, and it's actually just me here presenting this presentation to you today, although I appreciate my colleague Mickey Hazelwood being here with me today in Carson City. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present to the Interim Natural Resources Committee about our work on lithium and critical minerals. The Nature Conservancy, or TNC, is an international non-governmental organization whose mission is to conserve the lands and waters on which all life depends. We are a science-based organization. We use a non-confrontational, collaborative approach to seek solutions to issues. The Conservancy has been working in Nevada since the early 1980s. We have 30 staff members working for our Nevada chapter, and we own and manage nature preserves and conservation easements across the state. We also study issues that are relevant to achieving our mission. Lithium extraction is a topic that we've been investigating over the past several years, and today I'm here to share with you what we have learned about the potential impacts of lithium exploration and extraction on biodiversity. You may have noticed that critical minerals, especially lithium, have garnered a lot of media attention lately, but why should conservationists care? Well, society is at the beginning of a massive transition in our energy and transportation sectors. We're switching from fossil fuels technologies to using solar, wind, and geothermal energy and electric vehicles. Alternative energy technologies require critical minerals like copper, lithium, nickel, cobalt, and other minerals, many of which are found in Nevada. For example, the alternative energy transition will require lithium-ion batteries that are used in cars and for energy storage on the electric grid. While there is a global marketplace for lithium, there is only one site where it's currently extracted domestically in the United States, and that is at Silver Peak, Nevada. We know from observations of lithium extraction in other locations that there can be impacts from exploration and extraction, and so that is the focus of our work, to understand what those potential impacts are to biodiversity. So what is biodiversity, and why is it important? Biodiversity is the variety of organisms, plants, and animals found in a specific location. Humans and nature depend on biodiversity and those healthy ecosystems for life. Biodiversity is important for many reasons, including food security, job creation, natural disaster resistance, and medicines and human health. Nevadans depend on our high biodiversity for our water, our wildlife, our agriculture, and overall our way of life. Despite being an arid state, Nevada has incredibly high biodiversity, ranking as the 11th most biodiverse state in the U.S. Most of what we will present today is based on 3 products from the Nature Conservancy on lithium, 2 reports, and 1 published paper. Together with the larger group of TNC scientists, we've worked to complete analyses of the impacts of potential lithium extraction in the United States. All of these publications are available on the Nature Conservancy of California's science website, scienceforconservation.org. We also will talk about a current project we're working on related to critical minerals extraction. First, it is helpful to outline some of the factors that control impacts to biodiversity. We know that these can include extraction method, technology used, scale of production, and specific ecological and hydrological conditions at a site where extraction can occur. Here is a conceptual framework for thinking about the environmental impacts of lithium extraction. On the left, we have lithium in hard rocks and clays, represented in red, and lithium in brines, represented in blue. We can follow the black arrows to trace the environmental impact pathways from the extraction type through the impacts to the environment shown in the black-filled oblongs in the center of the figure. Additionally, you can further trace how changes in environmental conditions can impact different groups of species, shown in the green circles on the right. From the number of black arrows on this diagram, you can see the complexity of this system and the multitude of possible ways that living organisms can be impacted by lithium extraction. As part of our research, we contracted with the Desert Research Institute to prepare a framework and a checklist for considering potential hydrologic impacts of lithium extraction in Nevada. The framework and checklist can be helpful tools for evaluating if there is enough information to understand the risks and potential impacts to land and water resources from mining activities, including exploration, extraction, and closure. We highly encourage people to check out the checklist at the website on this slide. Now I'm going to describe how we analyze the potential impact to biodiversity from proposed lithium projects. Because one of the determinants of environmental impact is site specificity, TNC conducted an overlay analysis. To conduct this analysis, we first created a spatial data layer of proposed lithium extraction sites. We did this using USGS information about the location of lithium resources known as lithium focus areas. Those are shown in pink on this map. We conducted internet searches for lithium using the names of states where these pink lithium focus areas occur, spoke with experts to generate a list of where there is industry interest in extracting lithium, and researched claims data. With this approach, we generated a list of 72 proposed lithium extraction sites in the United States. These are places where there are existing mining claims or a stated interest by a mining company in developing lithium resources. So if we zoom in from the previous map, and we're just looking at California and Nevada, you can see the location of 55 proposed lithium extraction sites shown by the red dots here. 40 of these sites are located in Nevada. For each site, we looked at the claim boundary, shown by a solid black line, and a buffer around the claim area. A 2-mile buffer is commonly used in conservation planning practice. This is meant to capture potential impacts that could occur beyond the claim boundary due to activities within the claim boundary. These include things like fugitive dust or groundwater pumping that causes a drop in the depth of groundwater beyond the claim boundary. We examined a suite of data sets to see where the proposed project sites intersected with 4 categories of data: species and natural communities, conservation value, habitat, and land management designations. Listed here is an example of the data sets used in each category. The full table of data sets we examined is 10 pages long in our 2024 report. In the next several slides, I will be showing maps that depict how the spatial data layers shown here in the bold orange text intersect with an example proposed lithium extraction site located at Sarcobatus Flat, Nevada. First, The yellow dots on the map represent occurrence data for species that has been collected at Sarcobaeus Flat proposed lithium extraction site. These are records that have been collected in the field and entered into a publicly accessible database. Next is an example of data from the Nature Conservancy representing conservation value. The orange polygons represent places that we have mapped as recognized biodiversity locations. On this map, we can see the presence here of mapped phreatophytic vegetation. These are groundwater-dependent plant species. And finally, this map shows where there are different land ownerships at the site. The cross-hatched area on the map is a wilderness study area. We used this method of overlay analysis for the 55 sites in Nevada and California to understand what the potential impacts could be. And on this next slide, I'm just presenting the results only for those 40 sites in Nevada. This is the results from compiling those overlay analyses at each site for 40 of those sites. And as of the publication of our 2024 report, I just want to note that was done in February. At that time, there were almost 22,000 lithium mine claims in Nevada, and those are data from the Nevada Division of Minerals. Overall, we identified over 300,000 acres of proposed projects. We found 14 state-recognized special status species on those proposed projects. 18 of the proposed projects were in groundwater basins that are over-appropriated, and 7 of those projects are in groundwater basins that are both over-appropriated and over-pumped. And then there were 388 named springs and almost 100,000 acres of wetlands in the proposed project areas in Nevada. So from those results, we want to highlight the following conclusions. The first thing we noticed is that lithium is quite abundant. There's a lot of it out there, which helps us with our decisions on how we can develop it. The potential impacts, environmental impacts of lithium extraction may vary from site to site. More field-based studies at proposed extraction sites are needed to understand biology and hydrology well enough to quantify the impacts. All methods of extraction could impact wetlands, freshwater, and groundwater-dependent species and ecosystems. Direct lithium extraction techniques, while they may be promising, the impacts of those are not quite fully known. And then finally, groundwater impacts are site-specific, they're complex, and where groundwater is ancient, they're irreparable. So from these conclusions, we have developed the following recommendations for ensuring sustainable lithium extraction. First, cumulative analyses focused on wetlands are necessary, and the life cycle analyses are also necessary for understanding impacts beyond the extraction phase. With enough information, employing a smart from the start approach is possible where low conflict and low impact projects are prioritized and incentivized. And then finally, our research is focused on conflicts with biodiversity, but we're keenly aware that there are significant potential impacts to cultural resources and traditional areas that are important for Nevada's tribes. For any mining and extraction project, it's important that the permitting agencies and the project proponents have early, frequent, and transparent communication and engagement with tribal nations. Starting to close it out, I will say there has been a great focus on lithium, which is appropriate, but we need to look more broadly than lithium. TNC has identified at least 58 minerals that are critical to the energy transition, and it's highly probable these minerals will increase in demand, which means more exploration and potential mining. Exploration and early phases of mines have already begun for cobalt, nickel, and vanadium in Nevada. The USGS has put $320 million to finding those critical minerals, and as you can see from this map, Nevada is at the center of the hunt. It is important to think about what the next mineral in the energy transition rush will be, because Nevada will likely play a role. And to that end, TNC recently initiated a critical minerals conservation assessment in 6 western states, including Nevada. The goal of our study is to better understand the potential impacts of proposed critical mineral projects to biodiversity and communities, and to help communities, decision makers, and stakeholders identify those areas of less conflict. Ensuring that energy is that ensuring that energy-related exploration occurs in areas where there is less conflict is better for biodiversity, it's better for our communities, and we believe that it will actually enhance the pace of the energy transition. Thank you so much for your attention, and I welcome your questions.
All right, thank you so much for the presentation by the Nature Conservancy. Do we have any questions here in the South? Okay. Do we have any questions in the North? Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for presenting on this. So I was very heartened by the results slide that showed all of the mining claims that you looked at, and I just wanted to clarify. So there's almost 22,000 lithium mining claims, but less than 50 of them are in areas that are of concern. Is that correct? So the majority of them are actually in areas where it's not harmful. It's possible to mine lithium without being harmful to the species and the environment?
And so we looked at the amount of mining claims, which was 22,000 at that time. But
Please give us your name again for the record.
Pardon me. Thank you, Chair. My name is Jane Amone, for the record. And we looked at, but that we didn't fully analyze 22,000 mining claims. From there, we delved down and we identified 40 projects in Nevada that had significant interest, and we analyzed them from there. And the result on the slide was 14 special status species, but there were actually hundreds of species that each of the projects interacted with. The special status species are those that the state of Nevada has determined to be special status species.
Okay, thank you. So just to clarify then, there are obviously impacts from all of these, but there are some that are more or less harmful than others. Is that the results?
That's correct. We believe there are projects proposed in places that have higher conflict, and then there's projects proposed in places that have lower conflict. And really, to understand that conflict, more analyses is needed of the biology and the hydrology at each site.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Chair.
Okay. Assemblyman Gurr, did you have any questions? I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay. Anyone else from the South or the North? Assemblyman DeLong, did you have anything else?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clear up for the committee. Mr. Donnelly's comment that DLE doesn't have a regulatory structure is inaccurate. The BLM, the Nevada Bureau of Mining Regulation and Reclamation, Division of Water Resources, all have an existing regulatory structure that covers those type of operations. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Donnelly, did you have any closing comments? I don't know if you've already stepped back from the table or already left the room. Okay, thank you. Ms. Moan, thank you. This was such an interesting presentation, and we really, really appreciated the hard work done on the study. Were there any closing comments that you had?
This is Jane Amone for the record. No, ma'am. Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, committee, for your attention.
All right, wonderful. Well, we thank both presenters so much for taking the time to present with us today, and that will close out item number 5 on the agenda, and we'll move on to item number 6, which is a presentation on the importance of lithium mining and practices in Nevada. And we will hear from Amanda Hilton, president of the Nevada Mining Association, and Christy Schaff, senior specialist with Nexus Environmental Consultants, who are joining us today here in Las Vegas. We thank you so much for joining us, and we ask you to introduce yourselves for the record and proceed when ready.
Good morning, Chair Pazina and committee members. My name is Amanda Hilton, and I am the president of the Nevada Mining Association. Thank you very much for having us here today. While we're bringing up the presentation, I'd like to start with a little background information about the Nevada Mining Association. This association was originally founded in 1913. Our mission today is to unite, educate, advocate, and serve as the public voice of Nevada's modern mining industry. The Nevada Mining Association has hundreds of members representing every part of the mining supply chain, starting with exploration, discovery, development, construction, operation, production, closure, and reclamation. Our members are operators, suppliers, and individuals. Today, we've talked a lot about critical minerals, and I want to give some background information about the critical mineral designation. The Secretary of Interior has been given the responsibility to identify minerals that are essential for use and face supply chain vulnerabilities. The essential for use applies to healthcare, transportation, power generation, consumer electronics, and defense. There are several minerals that have been identified as critical, as Jana just pointed out, and in Nevada, we are currently mining lithium, copper, barium, and magnesium. In the state of Nevada, in the United States, there is one operating lithium mine, and that operating lithium mine is in Esmeralda County. It's the Silver Peak property located in Clayton Valley. That one property constitutes approximately 1% of all lithium production in the world. Besides the Silver Peak property, Lithium Americas has a fully permitted property called Thacker Pass that is in the construction phase. This property, once in operation and once they have completed phase 1 and phase 2 construction, will produce enough lithium to power approximately 1.6 million EV batteries per year. Production is expected in 2027, and that property did receive a more than $2 billion loan from the U.S. Department of Energy. Another property is the Rhyolite Ridge property, owned by Ioneer, that is in the permitting phase. If that permitting is approved, and once that property is constructed, they will be producing enough lithium to power 400,000 EV batteries per year. In addition, they will be producing a boron co-product, and that will produce approximately 10% of worldwide production of boron. There is only one other boron property in the United States today. The Rhyolite Ridge property also received a Department of Energy loan in the amount of approximately $700 million. These are the only 3 lithium projects that are likely to come online in this decade. There are a lot of claims outstanding, but these are the only 3 that will come online in the coming years due to the robust permitting process required. On both sides of the aisle, at the state level and at the federal level, there has been support for developing lithium mining properties in our state. I'll read a quote from Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. In order to meet our climate goals, we need to responsibly mine and process critical minerals right here in Nevada. And finally, a quote from Governor Joe Lombardo. Nevada is positioned to be ground zero for the energy transition and to play a key role in securing energy independence and security of the United States. We were asked today to primarily discuss the permitting process that exists at the federal and state levels, and at this time, I would like to turn the presentation to Christy Schaff, who works for Nexus Environmental Consultants.
Good morning, Chair Paniza and committee. Today I want to talk about the existing permitting process that we have in place.
Thank you, and go ahead and just spell your name for the record as well. Thank you.
Kristischaaff. So today we want to talk about the existing permitting process that is in place and how kind of lithium fits into that permitting process. So the first thing we wanted to do is we wanted to show a show a figure, sorry. We're going to pull this out. So this is a map, per se, that has been put together of the permitting process for a mining operation in Nevada. As we get it unrolled here, you can see it. It is a quite lengthy process. It is a quite complex process. So you can see the different connections, how the different permits interact with each other, how they are connected, and how the process proceeds. Thank you. Okay, so Nevada is 85% federal land. So today we'll talk about permitting on both federal and the state level. But that means most of the mineral projects in Nevada have to go through state or federal permitting because 85% of the land is on federal. Okay, permitting a lithium project. So as we've discussed, there are not a lot of active ongoing lithium projects in Nevada. So permitting a lithium project may seem new, but it's not. It's very similar to the existing permitting process we have for existing mining projects. So every mine project goes through a process up front where the specific permits they need are identified at the federal level, at the county level, and at the state level. And all of these permits are very specific to each project. So in that sense, the existing permitting process we have in place can be applied to lithium. Okay, we talked today about there are a lot of outstanding, or not outstanding, existing lithium claims in Nevada. One thing I wanted to explain there is a lithium claim does not mean a lithium mine. So the process can be a very long and very uncertain process from staking a claim to developing a mine. The initial exploration consists of multiple claims. So it's not like one claim, one exploration project. It is multiple claims to an exploration project. And then it is potentially even more claims when you move on to develop a mine. So even though there are multiple claims staked, I wanted to make sure that understanding that it takes multiple claims to get to a mine. Okay. I know you all have these slides, so I'm not going to go down the very specific list, but we have a couple of slides here to discuss the existing level of oversight and the number of agencies that currently have oversight and existing permits for projects in Nevada. Same thing on the federal side. There are a number of different agencies that already have regulatory authority over permitting on our 85% of our federal land. So again, this is very project specific, very site specific. So not all of these agencies will be involved in all of the projects. It will be determined based on the location and the specifics of each project. In addition, there is also county and local permitting involved. Again, it's not consistent across the board. Every county has different regulations. Every projects have different specifics. So some projects may need an encroachment permit from Department of Transportation, while others do not. Some projects may need a building permit, while others do not. So those are things that are all identified up front in the permitting process. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the federal permitting that takes place for a mine. So the exploration or mining company will start out by submitting an exploration plan or a mine plan of operations. These, especially the mine plan of operations, involve a lot of engineering, a lot of design, a lot of background work to develop that document. This will include the layout of the projects, the specifics of the projects, the materials thereafter, the disturbance areas of the projects, and many other details. In addition, there will be reclamation permits required and bonds required to put in place. And that plan of operations will then move through to the NEPA process on federal lands. So the NEPA process requires an extensive amount of baseline data to be collected. Again, this is very, very site specific. In general, you're going to have to collect air quality data. You're going to have to collect socioeconomic data of the existing communities you're in. You're going to have to talk about environmental justice communities. You're going to look at the biology, the very specifics of the very specific location you're looking at. This will include wildlife biology as well as botany, as well as review of sensitive species, as well as review of threatened and endangered species. There'll also be water studies for both surface water, groundwater, and water quality, and also review of existing cultural resources in the area. A couple other things about the NEPA process. It involves cooperating agencies, so other agencies, federal, state, and local, who have regulatory authority are invited to participate. So often this can include Department of Energy, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Environmental Protection Agency, Nevada Division of Environmental Protection, Nevada Department of Wildlife, Nevada Department of Transportation, National Park Service, local counties, local cities can often be involved in the process. And they are engaged early on and have the opportunity to be involved in the process and voice concerns prior to documents being issued, I guess, for public. So they're involved with the federal agency, BLM, or U.S. Forest Service throughout the process. The other important portion of the NEPA process is the public comment input periods. So during that process, you have an opportunity to provide what are called scoping comments. So this is upfront with a short description of the project where you can provide your input of, I'm concerned about this project because it's located next to this. I'm concerned about this project because how is it going to impact these species? After the analysis and the document and the environmental impact statement is completed, that will be issued and also provided for the public's input so they can review the document and provide comments more specific to the analysis that was completed. Okay, state permits. So again, multiple permits through the state, reclamation permits, water pollution control permits, underground injection control, air quality permits, water rights, and the Greater Sage-Grouse Conservation Credit System. Of course, this is very specific to each project. And again, if your project isn't in sage-grouse habitat, you're not going to apply those permits. If your project is not injecting water, you're not going to go after an underground injection control permit. One thing to note about this is also almost all of these permits as well have a public comment and input period. Okay, sorry. Let's see. Permitting timelines. So we are our nice big display here with the permitting process and the flow chart of that. So it does take 7 to 10 years to permit a mine. And I think what I want to say is that's just a mining project. So The piece that comes before that is when the company does exploration, they also have to get an exploration permit. So it may take them 2 to 3 years to get an exploration permit. And then when they have enough information to know they have a resource and develop a mine plan, then they can move on to that mine permit. And again, that is like typically about a 7 to 10 year timeline by the time they collect the baseline data and provide that information. Okay, and I'm going to turn it back over to Amanda.
Thank you again, Amanda Hilton, for the record. It is very difficult for us to distill down a 7 to 10 year permitting process in just a few moments, but thank you for this opportunity. I want to close this presentation by taking a quote out of the recently issued Interagency Working Group on Mining Laws, Regulation, and Permitting. The Biden-Harris administration charged the Department of Interior with developing a report with a goal to uphold the strongest environmental, labor, and community engagement standards. And in that report, the state of Nevada was called out as the best model that should be adopted for permitting processes across the state. The combination of the federal permitting processes and the state permitting processes are viewed as the best in class. So we'd like to welcome any questions at this time.
Thank you so much. And before we get to any questions, I did want to thank the Mining Association for sharing the permitting process with us today. Due to scheduling conflicts, both the Division of Minerals and BLM were unable to attend to share this with us. So we understand what a big lift this was and really, really appreciate your sharing with the committee the efforts that go into the permitting process. And with that, do we have any questions in Southern Nevada? Or Assemblyman Gurr, do you have any questions over Zoom? Okay. I'm seeing we may have something up in Northern Nevada. Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch, did you have a question?
I was actually just going to type that we are all set here. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Well, it looks like you managed to distill that information so well that it precluded any questions. So thank you very much. We really appreciate the presentation. And again, due to scheduling conflicts, we understand that this was a huge lift for your team. So we really thank you because this is important, I think, for the committee to understand. And with that, you may step back from the table and that will close out item number 6 on the agenda and move us into item number 7, which is a presentation on the current lithium industry landscape in Nevada. We'll hear from Caleb Cage with the Nevada Battery Coalition here today, and we thank you so much for joining us over Zoom. When you're ready, please introduce yourself for the record and begin.
Thank you, Chair Pazina and members of the committee. This is Caleb Cage, spelled C-A-L-E-B, last name Cage, C-A-G-E. I am the Executive Director of the Nevada Battery Coalition, and I am pleased to have the opportunity today to provide for you a presentation on the current lithium landscape in the state of Nevada. And while we're talking about lithium, this really is about the battery storage landscape here in Nevada, as I'll get into here in a little bit. It really is about the entire supply chain from exploration and extraction all the way to recycling. So I am looking forward to having a conversation with you today and presenting on our organization, as well as answering any questions that you may have as well. To begin, I would just like to set the stage a little bit with a statement about who we are and why we are here as the Nevada Battery Coalition. As you have heard from the previous presentations, Nevada is emerging as a leading battery center in North America. Every stage of the energy storage supply chain, from exploration to recycling, is present and is continuing to develop within our state. It'll continue to grow and is poised to continue to grow as well. The current investment in this industry has produced profoundly positive environmental, economic, and national security advantages, all of which are strengthened by uniting the industry through the Nevada Battery Coalition, which is on whose behalf I am here today. So let me start a little bit by telling you about the Nevada Battery Coalition and how we came to be. In November of 2022, I began joining calls with various industry members throughout the state to discuss the importance of this industry in our state from an economic development, workforce development, but also from a national security and environmental standpoint. And we began talking about what we wanted, how we wanted to position ourselves going forward. In February of 2023, we had a soft launch of our organization and announced that we would be forming later in the year. And in fact, just 2 months later, from at the end of March, a month and a half later, we were incorporated. And by the middle of last year, we had our first membership drive, establishing ourselves as a membership, not 501c6 yet, but trade association here in Nevada as we continue to pursue federal IRS designation as well. In December of 2024, we held our annual meeting and elected our board officers. They're listed on this slide. You can see Nicole Cook from Panasonic Energy North America serves as our chair. Tim Crowley from Lithium America serves as our vice chair. Alexia Sober from Comstock Metals serves as our secretary. And Dominic Sennett from Dragonfly Energy serves as our treasurer. As I alluded to previously, our mission, our focus is to ensure public awareness of the importance of this industry in our state and how important Nevada is to the future of this industry in our country as well, to promote the industry, whether that is within regions or with work opportunities or letting people know what the value of these jobs in this industry is in our state. And then finally, working with our member companies and workforce and economic development partners throughout the state to ensure that we are building the supply chain, but also ensuring that we're doing everything we can to provide the workforce development capacity for this supply chain as well. Currently, the Nevada Battery Coalition has 22 member companies. These are dues-paying members. We have a number of other organizations and public agencies that are affiliated with us, but these are dues-paying members of our organization. Each element of the supply chain upstream, which is your exploration and extraction side of the supply chain, midstream, which is your chemical manufacturing and engineering, and downstream, which is your product finishing as well as recycling sides of the supply chain, are all represented within the 22 members of the Nevada Battery Coalition. And we also represent startup companies, some that are very entrepreneurial, some that are mid-size, and some that are major producers here in the state, like Tesla and Panasonic and Redwood and others who are well established and at a national level as well. I want to also point out that not only are each of these upstream, midstream, and downstream parts of the supply chain represented, but each of the stages of the supply chain are also represented by companies within our organization as well. As I noted previously in the overview slide, the Nevada Battery Coalition recognizes alignment for Nevada's opportunity with a national opportunity. And that national opportunity has really been driven by the Biden administration with support from our federal delegation as well. You heard the quotes from Senator Cortez Masto and Senator Rosen, who've been incredible supporters of this industry at the national level. But it's driving towards a national strategy of onshoring and friendshoring the battery storage supply chain as a critical part of the energy transformation that we are underway here in the United States. That also contributes to our energy independence, which we all believe, or I assume we all believe, is an incredibly important part of not just our national security, but our ability to continue to operate economically, as well as our diplomatic and other needs throughout the nation and throughout the world. Finally, it's an opportunity to address decarbonization, which you've heard quite a bit about earlier, and to economically diversify nationally as well. You're seeing growth in manufacturing in these areas, which provides economic opportunity to people throughout the nation as well. This national opportunity aligns with a unique opportunity for the state of Nevada as well. You've heard some of these factors before, or you'll hear some of them from later presentations, I assume, as well. But Nevada is truly in an incredible position, not only as our colleagues at the Mining Association said previously, are we leading in the model for responsible mining, but throughout the entire supply chain, we're leading in each one of these areas. And here are just a few examples of Nevada's ability to lead at the national level. As the Nevada Mining Association representative said, Nevada has the only operational lithium mine in the United States. The next two lithium mines that are likely to make it through the permitting process are also in the United States, and we agree that after those two, there really are. We're really looking for towards the end of the current decade and into the next decade before additional lithium mining operations are on board. Additionally, Nevada is the only state in the nation with companies in all 7 stages of the lithium supply chain. And why is that important? It's important because currently the lithium supply chain spreads from Asia and Australia to Latin America to Northern America to Europe, all over the globe. And the more we can onshore from a national level that supply chain to the United States, the more efficient our process is. And Nevada is the only state in the nation that actually has all of that onshored here to within one state. That doesn't mean we're set. That doesn't mean there are not weaknesses within that supply chain. That's certainly one of our issues and initiatives that we are working on. But it means that we have a head start and we are well ahead of other states as the federal government continues to invest, as private entities continue to invest, and as we see the entrepreneurial spirit driving this industry here in Nevada, we and across the nation, we intend to and anticipate being a leader in this space. In addition to those, Nevada company has also received the largest federal loan for a single natural resources project, $2.4 billion federal loan from the U.S. Department of Energy for the Lithium Americas project that was alluded to earlier. The University of Nevada, Reno, in addition to receiving a National Science Foundation grant, has also received Phase 1 designation, one of 32 tech hubs in the country, and the tech hub focus is on the battery storage supply chain here in the state. I know economic development will follow, and we'll likely talk about the national workforce, but a huge amount of the national workforce for the clean energy sector resides in Nevada. And a 2022 report predicted a 5-fold increase in global lithium demand through 2030, which Nevada is incredibly well positioned to benefit from that opportunity. And also electrifying Nevada, building Nevada's battery supply chain, closing the lithium loop. All of these terms are used to signify the importance of this industry from an economic development standpoint from the state of Nevada. This Actually, I'm going to go back to the previous slide. That's not just economic development on the macro sense, in the macro terms, but also in the micro terms, and how that benefits families across the state with well-paying, good-paying jobs as well. The national security interests and the state interests are aligning right now very much in Nevada's benefit. This is the critical onshoring and friendshoring efforts that are currently underway to bring this supply chain to the United States so that we have more control over our energy destiny and more independence within our for national security as well as for our environmental interests. There is a generational investment underway right now from the federal government in order to support the growth of this industry. And as has been alluded to earlier, this has come with bipartisan support from the Biden administration, the federal delegation, as well as Governor Lombardo, to ensure that we are aligned with federal interests to benefit all Nevadans. There is, as I'm sure will be discussed more, incredible private sector innovation that this is creating an entrepreneurial boom within the state of Nevada, in my opinion, unlike we've ever experienced before. And all of this is due, again, at the state level to the governor's leadership and lawmaker support, people like yourselves. What kind of impact is this going to have? I've already talked about the incredible outcomes and opportunities at the national security level, addressing climate change, economic stability and growth. But Nevada aligning with this opportunity allows us to have the incredible opportunity to continue to diversify our economy, which began in earnest in 2010. This provides better jobs for Nevada's families throughout the state, in all parts of the state, and for Nevada to lead in this critical area of energy transition. So, Madam Chair, members of the committee, that concludes my remarks, and I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions down here in Southern Nevada? Okay, I believe Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch may have a question up in Northern Nevada.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on one of your members. I saw that Redwood Materials is one of your coalition members, and I just wondered if you could speak a little bit more to that process of battery recycling, because I do think, as you mentioned, it's critical to close that lithium loop, and maybe successes or challenges that we are seeing in that space.
Thank you so much for the question. Caleb Cage, for the record, Madam Chair, through you to Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
You may go direct, and thank you.
Thank you very much. I would love to be able to give you an overview of that process, and unfortunately, I'm not an expert on it at all. What I can tell you is Redwood Materials, Aqua Metals, which is another company here in Northern Nevada, are really two companies that are really leading the space nationally on recycling these materials as they come in. I know that Redwood is building here, continuing to build here in Nevada to make sure that they can support the industry. But this is a way for a significant percentage, upwards of 80% of lithium that has already been put into batteries to be removed and put back into the supply chain as well. So that's why this is referred to as a a circular supply chain, because recycling generates materials that can then go back into the process earlier. I would be more than happy to reach out to representatives from Redwood and from Aqua Metals and others to provide some printed material or videos on how that process actually works. Unfortunately, I get out of my depth extremely quickly on this very important process.
That would be fantastic. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm not seeing any further questions in Southern or Northern Nevada. Assemblyman Gurr doesn't have any questions either. So we thank you very much, Mr. Cage, for your presentation. It was incredibly informative. And I think we all maybe learned what friendshoring means here today. So thank you so much again. And with that, we will close out item number 7 on the agenda and move to item number 8, a presentation on lithium and economic development in Nevada. For this, we're going to hear from Mr. Bob Potts, the Deputy Director with the Governor's Office of Economic Development, to discuss lithium and economic development in Nevada. Mr. Potts is joining us in Carson City. We thank you so much for being here today, and please introduce yourself for the record when you're ready.
Chair Pezzina, members of the committee, it's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. Again, my name is Bob Potts. I'm the Deputy Director in the Governor's Office of Economic Development. I apologize on the front end that I didn't have a set of slides or handouts or anything to accompany what I would like to discuss here. It's actually because I just got done leading a river trip down the Colorado. And so I am a huge fan of natural resources, right? And preserving them not just for us today and our generations, but generations to come. In Lake, I feel the same way about strategic economic development. We need to really think about how we have this conversation and not an either or, but as a both and how we get this across the line. So with that, I'm gonna, what I'd like to do is just start with kind of a high-level overview of what economic development is and what our strategic plan was and how that came out of that and how the lithium loop fits into it. Most of my comments are gonna fit in pretty tight and pretty close with what Director Cage talked about in the previous presentation, but it incorporates at a higher level all the conversations, and I really appreciate what everybody's brought forward here, trying to find a path through for this huge opportunity that is in front of our state and where it can bring us. A lot of times people think about economic development and economic growth as kind of the same thing. Economic growth, though, and although they're highly correlated, they're different. Growth talks more about change over time. That's where we talk about job growth, talk about population growth, income growth, those kind of things. Economic development talks about how that growth happens. And paying attention to the how leads to what the change looks like on the growth on the backside and where we're going with that. And that's what the Governor's Office of Economic Development is all about, and it's what our Regional Development Authority partners that we work with on this and across the state is to think strategically about where, how we're going to do economic development for the highest and best use. Thinking about it kind of like child development. When you raise your kids, you develop them up. You know that some of them have more of a propensity towards math or history or English or music, sports, whatever it might be. We focus our efforts where our comparative advantage is, and we build on those strengths, but we don't do it to the exclusion of the other things they need to be fully functional adults when they finally hit the streets, okay? It's the same thing with economic development. We need to look at what our comparative advantages are in this state, where we have huge opportunities, what our challenges are, where our weaknesses, where the threats are, and make sure that we stay in front of them and say no to things that don't work, but say yes to things that do. And when we're talking about new industries, like we're talking about at today's hearing, is to think about the appropriate ways to do this so that everybody wins and we get across the line. Because generationally, like we want to protect our natural resources, we also want to make sure there's economic opportunity that's sustainable over time. So with that, a lot of times people come up to me and they say, you know, when you ask them what is economic development, it's jobs and it's businesses and those sort of things. Those are the outcomes of good economic development. Economic development includes things like thinking about workforce, thinking about real estate, thinking about capital investment, thinking about policy, thinking about our suppliers, all of these other things that go into it that set the context for us to be really successful on our economic development efforts to get the highest and best out of all of this. In order to do that, you have to have partnerships across the board, and there has to be a cohesive strategic approach to doing all of these things. And at the end of the day, then you get to enjoy the outcomes of great jobs that pay well and economic opportunity that lives on in a sustainable way. One of the ways that we think about this is export base and import substitution. I'll talk a little bit about that a little further on down here. Export base, all that refers to is what do we produce in here that's sold to consumers outside of our regions, outside of our state, that brings money back in, okay? The leisure and hospitality has always been an export-based industry in our state, and it's been great. We sell fun to a whole lot of people that live someplace else, and money flows back in, which grows the capacity, and we see all this growth and the spin-off effects. The downside of that industry is it's largely based on discretionary dollars, right? So if there's a national, international recession, things like that, we suffer, and that leads us to this very pro-cyclical economy we have. We have higher highs and lower lows than the business cycle at the national level. Okay, so a big part of economic development, that's where the whole diversification idea comes in. All right, to mitigate risk, just like diversifying your retirement portfolio. Those are the elements that come into our strategic plan as we start thinking about things going forward. A strategic plan, you know, a vision, a mission, goals, objectives, strategies, all the things that go into it, tactics, objectives, all the rest of that, that's all included in our strategic plan. Our strategic plan was built around a typical strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. But it's largely built on what happened in our first regional plan that came out in 2012, Unify, Regionalize, Diversify Nevada's Economy. That was the title for it, an economic agenda for the state. And some of the successes that we've seen out of that, some of the things that didn't work too good. But for the most part, our new strategic plan that was released a year ago, March, and then we added some other stuff that we updated in December, is largely built on that and the successes that we've seen and all the activity that happens over the last 10, 12 years. Huge successes. I know Caleb had mentioned, Mr. Cage had mentioned a few of those in his previous presentation, but it's pretty clear that this industry has played a critical role, and I'm talking about the entire lithium industry, as we started in its infancy back in 2013 and going forward, and where we find ourselves now. He had mentioned the entire lithium loop, as we call it. It is a thin line, and there's a lot of room for other people to come in and companies and opportunities to move forward on this, but it is complete. Whether you're talking about the extractive side of things, all the way through the processing side of things, and then on to the manufacturing of batteries, to final demand auto manufacturing with the Tesla semi-trucks and where that's going, and then to the recycling side where we re-inject everything back into the system. It is really a very cool story. And as we build out this whole thing, you can see how it affects the economy. If you go back to the downturn in the COVID downturn, we've seen Southern Nevada hit the highest unemployment rate ever seen in the country at 34%. It was little over 20% here in Northern Nevada as the economy shut down to keep people safe, right? But it took about 11 months for Las Vegas to get to single digits. It took 4 months for the same thing to happen up here in the north. Okay, this is what diversification does, and it largely pivots around this industry and components of this industry. To get back to full employment, Reno was there in 11 months, and it was 43 months before Southern Nevada got there. That's a big deal, right? And so that's motivation for us to think about what we're doing in economic development to help make sure that we stand up resilience and sustainability, not only when we think about natural resources, but when we think about our economy as a whole, okay? And that's what got built into our state strategic plan. So on the back end, at a high level in our state plan, there are 3 pillars that we're focusing on. It's called Connected Nevada, Electric Nevada, and Innovative Nevada, okay? And obviously, the Electric Nevada has everything to do in this whole lithium loop space that we find ourselves in. The Innovative Nevada, if you think about this industry as a whole, I mean, it was brought up in a number of presentations, a number of contexts here at this hearing about how we're trying to figure this out as we move forward. That's the whole innovation side. But what it brings along are a whole host of folks that are excited, they're entrepreneurs, they're figuring out how to do a better job with with the direction that our economies are going and the directions that we need to go with these things, okay? And then on the whole connected side, that gets us tied back to when we think about energy storage, when we think about transportation and the electrification of transportation and where it goes there. So everything that we're talking about in this industry is integral to us accomplishing our strategic plan going forward, which again is built on a full assessment of what's happened in the past decade, what was good and what's moving forward, and where the opportunities lie. As Mr. Cage mentioned, we expect this industry to grow by 5 times out to 2030. I mean, that's 5 years out from now. We currently have 25,000 people that are directly employed in this industry in one form or another, whether it's in the mining side or on the processing side or the manufacturing side, whatever. That's just the direct side. The spin-off effects of this, especially when you build out a full loop where you have a complete supply chain, go up exponentially. It's not a one-to-one relationship on what the spin-off effects are. And it creates opportunity for folks that are in one portion of the supply chain to have mobility to go to other portions of the supply chain, and how that all spins out. Nevada as a whole, because of our mining history, and we have these natural resources available to us, we do have a leg up specifically in this space to move forward. All of that said, 80% of all of the lithium that's processed is done in China. Okay? 90% of the lithium that's currently mined comes from South America. So we've got our nose under the tent on this whole in this industry. It's a matter of building it out and adding capacity as we go forward. And it's the future. It's not a mature industry. Part of the challenge that we have with some of our historical industries is they're becoming mature. We compete, for instance, with the gaming industry with Singapore and Macau, and we've seen how that plays out. This is a chance for us to rocket forward, and it's a place to move forward, not just with the number of jobs in new industries where there's opportunity to move around, but also in what those positions pay and what the compensation is for those positions are. You couple that in with what the federal political climate is when you talk about security, when you talk about available funding that's been put out, if you talk about this onshoring policy that we have, if you talk about the California's 2035 zero emissions policy. I mean, the other huge comparative advantage our state has that I haven't really built is being next to California. Being within a day's drive of markets and suppliers and being able to be here is one of the advantages that most states would crawl over broken glass to have. And for us to take advantage of that in a way that supports the future of our of what's coming forward and for our children, I think is paramount as we make these kind of decisions and as we set the stage going forward. And again, I appreciate the fact that this is not an either or. It's a both and conversation. If you think about the state like it were a big piece of machinery, and where that piece of machinery produces the best is when all of the pieces that are in it, whether it's the gears or the conveyor belts or the structure or the motor, if every one of them operates to their best and nobody's jealous of what one's getting over the other one, that's when we get the highest and best out of the whole thing. If we focus on just one, whether to eliminate it or give it all the attention, will be at the expense of everybody winning in this whole conversation. That's the goal of economic development and doing this smart. So appreciate your time. I'm happy to answer whatever questions I can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Director Potts. Do we have any questions here in Southern Nevada? All right, Assemblywoman Considine.
Thank you, and thank you, Director Potts. I appreciate what you've said. I guess just in a larger scale, sitting here and listening to everything this morning, we're talking about the growing industry. We've heard a lot about we're the only state with currently having active lithium mines, that we're in the forefront of so many things that, you know, it's 10 years before anything else happens. We've gotten the biggest federal loans and federal support. I guess my question is, as you're talking about all of this economic development, what specifically do you see that GoEd would have to outlay or planning to support that isn't already in the works from everything else going on? I mean, if we seem to be the center of it, I'm wondering what else we need to push that forward financially from GoEd.
So for the record, thanks for that question, Assemblywoman Considine. For the record again, Bob Potts. I mentioned earlier, and there's a whole bunch of things that need to happen when you've got an industry that's in its infancy, but it's really taken off, and with the potential of growing 5 times out to 2030, right? That's pretty crazy. But I mentioned early on that this industry is really an innovative industry. It's figuring out, too, as it moves forward. It's figuring out better energy storage technology. It's figuring out better mobility questions. There's a whole host of things that are going. We listened to a number of really great presentations about the technology that's in it. Which ones should we do? Which ones shouldn't we? What ones make sense? There's all of that. I think that one of the things that would be most helpful going forward is having support of innovation and startups, and help and better understand and providing the capacity for companies to be successful and for these people that are trying to move this forward to address carbon footprints and climate change and things like that to do it better. And I think that some of the innovation, I think that we've got presentations coming up on that, but what we've seen with the Tech Hub grant and where the federal government wants to go with that was the National Science Foundations and the Engines grants. When we think about the Knowledge Fund in our office, when we think about all the things that we could do to help stimulate and provide the resources and capacity for folks that are really doing something pretty great going forward, I think would be really helpful.
Thank you. So there's nothing specific that you're thinking about. You're just, at this point, we're sort of on the sidelines waiting to see how things work, and if all of these different entities, these startups, these innovation things that we already have, if those are chugging along, we're just going to ride with it, but you don't have anything specific in mind right now?
Oh my goodness, I have, again, for the record, Bob Potts, I could have a pretty good laundry list of things that would be really helpful going forward. I mean, helping with the permitting process, I think, is key. And shortening that up. Think about when, over the last decade, how quickly Story County was able to turn things around to make things happen out there. That's huge. So streamlining the processes for companies to get up and be operational would be huge. Obviously we deal with tax abatements and trying to invest in these companies as they're trying to get stood up and started up. So anything that we can help on that front, I think, is critically important, so that they stand up and can become fully operational, productive, and throw economic value back in that yields huge returns at the end of the day. That's where I would stay in this front.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we might have had a question up north from Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, Chair. I actually have 2, if you will allow. So along similar lines, I did have questions on what resources or support or capacity meant, but I think you did mention permitting and abatements. So my question is, we just had a whole day where we were shown that the lithium is here. They're not going anywhere else. We've got all of these companies already here, and not small companies, right? We've got Tesla, we've got Panasonic, we've got these multinational corporations. My question is, why do these large industries that aren't going to go anywhere else need our taxpayer money in order to come here?
Well, part of it, for the record again, Bob Potts, if you go back to 2013, Tesla was the biggest startup in the world, right? And we're just trying to figure out how to get this whole thing going on. And what they were looking for was a place to land and a place that would support them going forward. If you springboard forward where we are right now and what they've brought in, at the wisdom and the investment that was made on that front end is pretty profound. Instead of $3.5 billion in investment, they did $6.5 billion in investment. Instead of 6,500 jobs, they're well over 10,000 jobs. The wages, anyways, that's just one example in the middle of this whole thing. I think that it always needs to be made clear that tax abatements are just that. They're abatements, they're not exemptions. They're investments in the future for return on those investments. And they need to be done just like everything else that we're talking about here. They need to be done thoughtfully, they need to be done strategically, with keeping in mind what the outcomes, where the outcomes are, what kind of outcomes do you want? What jobs, technology, how does that fit into education? Where does that talk about opportunity? Where does that talk about in sustainability and all of those sort of things? That's part of the effort that we put into our strategic plan that outlines those kind of things, and where we want to go, what the goals are going forward, and the steps that are necessary to take it. Those are just one tool in the toolbox that we don't want to compromise. And quite frankly, we're not very competitive on that front. So,
thank you, and thank you, Chair. My other question is along similar lines. So you mentioned being strategic, and I appreciate that. And you brought up the Northern Nevada statistics, and obviously I'm a Northern Nevada representative. And I thought it was interesting. You mentioned that we recovered more quickly than Southern Nevada, but we also have higher cost of living. We also have higher housing, and we also have a significant strain on our infrastructure. And so I just wondered what those factors play in your considerations when you're bringing into these industries, and what role they play in having to pay back into the community, in which they're taxing that infrastructure.
So again, for the record, this is Bob Potts. Absolutely, we think about that. GoEd as a whole is an agency of 45 FTEs, and most of those are tied up in different divisions that don't specifically talk in the business development area in this space that we're talking about right here. There is no way that we can do all of those things, but that's why it's so critically important that we have partnerships when we talk about housing, when we talk about transportation, when we talk about all these growth pains that you're referring to, because they are growth pains. So, whether you talk about school crowding, whether you talk about housing and, choke points and freeways and things like that, those are all issues that we have to address, and we have to do it in concert with the different projects that we're doing at the time. So there are times, water scarcity, that's a huge one. So there are, and a lot of times it's not known, there are times where we just say, no, that's not going to work for us. Maybe you need to talk to Missouri or whatever, right? And do those kind of things. One of the great advantages that I've learned over time working in Nevada is because we've grown really fast, we're still very much a small state. And everybody has an opportunity to talk to somebody, or if somebody knows somebody that they don't. And so there's all of these ongoing relationships of working with the counties when we make these decisions. The RDA structure, I think, is paramount. The regional development authorities, what they know that's going on in the ground and in their backyard, are able to coordinate those kind of efforts going forward. I've talked a lot of metaphors here. Economies are like grease poles. You can't stand still. You're either going up or you're sliding down. And so you have to think about, do you want to be going up and figuring out how you're going to address these things as you move forward, not necessarily knowing all the answers on the front end, doing your best to be proactive and stay in front of those things? Or are you going to stay where you are and be at risk of pro-cyclical economies and high unemployment rates and being a victim of discretionary spending shortfalls, those sort of things? So, yeah, absolutely, we need to work together. That's why it's so important we have these types of conversations as well. And I appreciate the question, I do.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any further questions in Southern Nevada or Northern Nevada or over Zoom. So with that said, thank you so much, Deputy Director Potts. and Goed for presenting today. That will close out item number 8 on our agenda, and that will move us to our last presentation related to lithium and lithium mining today, which we will hear from Dr. Jeff Thompson, Executive Vice President and Provost at the University of Nevada, Reno, and Dr. James Faulds, State Geologist, Professor and Director of the Nevada Bureau of Mines and Geology at UNR, presenting on the lithium life cycle. We appreciate having you join us today in Las Vegas, and whenever you're ready, we'll have you proceed. We're going to make sure your microphone is on because we don't want to miss any of the important information you're sharing.
Thank you. Not something I'm used to doing, so I apologize for not turning on the microphone. So thank you, Chair and members of the committee, for giving us this opportunity to speak with you about the University of Nevada, Reno, and some of the work we are doing in the lithium realm. My name is Jeff Thompson, for the record, and I serve as the Executive Vice President and Provost for the University of Nevada, Reno. I'm very happy to have joined with me today Professor James Faulds, who's the Director of the Nevada Bureau of Mines and Geology, and also the Nevada State Geologist. And Sheila Bray is our Director of Government and Community Engagement. So I'm here to discuss how Nevada has a unique opportunity to become the world's top producer of lithium, a key component of the clean energy transition, and how the University of Nevada, Reno is well suited to support the state of Nevada in this emerging and important industry, from mining, production, recycling, workforce, and community development. And a lot of things I'll be talking about today have already been presented, so I'll be reinforcing some of those discussions. So demand for lithium and lithium-ion batteries is increasing and is going to continue to increase. The global lithium-ion battery market is projected to be worth more than $400 billion by 2023, with the U.S. economy accounting for $130 billion of the global demand. And to meet this demand, the U.S. EV market will require about 412,000 tons of lithium carbonate equivalent mined and refined annually. And currently, the entire world is only producing around 400,000 tons, and more than half of that is processed and produced in China. So how do we supply this industry with the lithium it needs to power our transportation and our industries moving forward? And we believe this is Nevada's opportunity to capture the entire production chain of the lithium loop. So Nevada's the answer to this challenge. Nevada's abundant and critical minerals, geothermal potential, and solar resources that enable our great state to drive high-tech industries fueled by clean energy. Nevada has the largest lithium mineral reserves in the United States and is the only state with an operating lithium production facility. However, this facility in Clayton Valley only produces around 5,000 metric tons per year, far less than what we need. The Nevada Tesla plant alone consumes nearly 5 times that amount. Luckily, Nevada has the largest known lithium deposits in the U.S., including Thacker Pass and Clayton Valley, among others. These are estimated to have around 113 million metric tons of lithium carbonate equivalent. Based on known resources, Nevada can boost its output more than 20-fold to around 113,000 metric tons each year. Adding this to a burgeoning lithium recycling industry would make Nevada a hub for U.S. lithium production. This distinctly Nevadan industry not only has the potential to address our energy transition, but will be a major economic driver for our state. Currently, mining in our state is about a $9 billion industry and employs 41,000 people. Imagine what a lithium loop can bring to Nevada. And Nevada is the only state in the U.S. that encompasses all elements of the lithium battery supply chain, from deposits to processing, manufacturing, and recycling. Of course, this is a picture of the Tesla plant. And having companies like Tesla here has built an ecosystem for development and innovation, and for companies like Dragonfly in Reno that has transitioned from a startup to a major lithium battery producer. The potential economic impact across Nevada is immense. In 2022, the lithium sector in Nevada employed around 9,000 people, And Thacker Pass alone estimates employing 1,000 people during construction and 300 people during the life cycle of the mine. The lithium workforce offers high wage opportunities for rural and urban communities alike in all aspects, including mining, production, and recycling. And of course, the University of Nevada, Reno is ideally placed to serve all aspects of the lithium battery supply chain, from deposit discovery to processing, manufacturing, and recycling. The University of Nevada, Reno has unique expertise in supply chain management, community and workforce development, and the environment and biology of the Great Basin through a number of specialized programs in the Mackey School of Earth Sciences and Engineering, the College of Engineering, the Colleges of Business and Science. And the University of Nevada, Reno is already providing the industry with cutting-edge research and engineering it needs to make Nevada a leader in lithium while focusing on ethical and sustainable mining practices. Our researchers are in the field and lab working on everything from novel, more sustainable lithium extraction processes to carbon capture, battery technology, and recycling innovation. With a focus on supply chain and community and workforce development, the University of Nevada, Reno supports the entire lithium ecosystem, from upstream and midstream, from mining, economic geology, geological sciences and engineering, and environmental justice and workforce development, to the biology of our great state through natural resources and environmental sciences and ecology and conservation biology, and through the College of Engineering, battery technologies and recycling and supply chain. And of course, our main product, our graduates, the workforce. So with a focus on supply chain, community, and workforce development, the university supports the entire lithium ecosystem, and our graduates are supplying the industry with a talented workforce already. National and global demand for lithium continues to outpace the discovery of new deposits. This is a geologic map that was produced by the Nevada Bureau of Mines and Geology very recently, and is a study of a deposit in Nevada. And Nevada is ripe with unexplored potential. To make Nevada the nation's leader in lithium production, we must be able to identify new deposits, develop models to predict where lithium and other critical minerals can be found, and responsibly extract and process these resources. This requires the academic expertise and research of the University of Nevada, Reno to better understand how lithium resources develop and to reduce risk and impacts in exploration and development. And one of the great things about this map is it shows an unexplained or underexplained lithium resource and opportunities in our state that are different than current mines and mine plans, and build opportunities across the entire state for mineral deposits and mineral extraction. So what's needed to ensure Nevada leads in lithium? So now's a critical time for investment in lithium research. Resources are needed to address supply chain issues, increase economic development and competitiveness, and enhance national security. Several federal programs have already been established or expanded to support the critical minerals industry. Nevada has a chance to capture this opportunity now. The University of Nevada, Reno is ready to lead. However, additional investments are needed to unleash our full potential. These investments will help to ensure environmentally sound economic development and diversification in both rural and urban areas of Nevada. We're all very fortunate to live in Nevada and to have the opportunity for us to research and work in Nevada. Hope you're inspired by this potential to make Nevada the national leader in lithium production. And I want to thank you for your time, and we would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you so much, Provost. Do we have any questions down here in Southern Nevada? Senator Flores.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that presentation. I heard you mention multiple times workforce, and I know it's a conversation that kind of, in Nevada in general, we're having in every single committee room. I am curious to know, and I know you mentioned it kind of broadly, but I am curious to know what's that looking like? What's that classroom structure looking like, and that pipeline, and what within X amount of years, semesters, just trying to understand that a little bit deeper, if anybody could break that down.
So thank you, Senator Forrest, for a question, and it is a complicated question and sometimes difficult to answer. But I'll start by saying that our graduates are already involved in these.
Provost, if you could just say your name one more time for the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. For the record, Jeff Thompson, Executive Vice President and Provost, University of Nevada, Reno. It's a complicated question that you ask, and it's always difficult. And we already have a lot of our graduates who are working in these industries and developing these industries through innovation and research. And part of it is that the industry is changing so quickly. We are also getting feedback from the industry on what are their needs as we go forward. But certainly engineers, recycling, chemical engineers, metallurgical engineers, mining engineers, economic geologists, but also supply chain. Nevada has a lot of unique opportunities on supply chain, on how to get materials from one area to another for whether you're doing processing or recycling. And then, of course, our communities, how to have people who have expertise in planning and community planning when we're looking at schools, hospitals, all the things you need for quality of life across our state. So there are some specific places where I know we need some support, but it's going to be across all of higher education, to be honest with you, from again, having electricians and millwrights to having PhD chemists who can design new ways for carbon capture.
And Madam Chair, if I could have a quick follow-up. And I know one of the conversations that we've been having throughout the day, but really has been here for years in Nevada, is how we balance the obligation that we have to do this responsibly with ensuring that the industry is making money, and we see how many humans are being fed by this industry now. I'm curious to know how the academic side weighs that, right? So on the one end, you're creating a pipeline, and students are excited about the opportunity of longevity, having a great job, strong benefits, working for a powerful industry. How's the conversation happening in the classroom on the responsibility side, right? So that we're not just encouraging the student, this is a great opportunity to work, but we got to make sure that longevity means that we're all collectively be working through a responsible approach to doing all this. And I'm just curious to know how the academic lens is approaching that.
Thank you for the question, Senator Flores. Jeff Thompson, for the record, Executive Vice President and Provost, University of Nevada, Reno. So this is a space we have been working in for a long time. When we look at responsible development and sustainability, and it occurs across many aspects of our institution, whether it's economic geologists making decisions on environmental impact or possible environmental impact, to natural resources, environmental sciences, evaluating water use, to the engineers looking at technology. We're reducing carbon emissions. For example, at Thacker Pass, our faculty have worked very hard to help them reduce their carbon emissions, but also to limit water use in Nevada, which is also an important part of this. But the next part is also, what does it mean to be responsible in a community, and look at how we're going to support or have our students ready to support communities and be part of communities, but to look at the longevity of economic development across the community. That this is not something that ends, but expect will go on for generations. And sorry if I would yield for Professor Falls.
Yes, thank you for the question, Senator Flores, and Jim Falls, Nevada State Geologist, for the record. One aspect of that that's very foundational is the generation of public goods, such as those geologic maps, which are produced, in this case, by a state agency, the Nevada's Geological Survey, and known in Nevada as the Nevada Bureau of Mines and Geology. Every state has such a survey, and we generate those geologic maps, which are fundamental in terms of understanding our natural resources and also the deposits in the area that are relative to how you might develop infrastructure or develop that resource in the most sustainable and responsible way. And so we have to understand that picture so that you don't develop an area that might be prone to landslides, for example, or prone to other natural hazards, or perhaps be environmentally sensitive. And so those public goods are very foundational and important not only for industry, for evaluation of resource potential, but also important for development and sustainable, responsible development.
Madam Chair, I have more of a comment, no question, I promise. And I really appreciate that because I know there was a huge concern about how we do this responsibly, but I think you have the biggest role because if the workforce is coming from our institutions and every individual that's going to be out there having this opportunity of a job who's also thinking of how do we ensure that this is the best thing or the best approach for everyone. I think that's the most powerful role, more powerful than even what we can do with legislation or what the industry is saying that they're doing or somebody suggesting that they're not doing. I think that's going to be the most powerful kind of balancing act, that classroom that you have. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and I believe that Assemblywoman Considine has 2 questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I have, I guess, a little bit more of a specific question. I'm very pleased to know that our state institutions are very involved in this entire area of mining and this growth in lithium and becoming such an integral part of something that affects the globe. What I was curious about is UNR's role with working on that current cutting edge with DLE. Do you have graduates working with Clayton Valley? Is UNR as an institution sort of becoming a partner and sort of taking some sort of ownership over this whole, maybe not ownership is the right word, the DLE process? Because if this is going to be so cutting edge and changing, I would love to see, the state of Nevada be at that forefront and kind of having that foundation for future growth off of that.
So thank you for the question. For the record, Jeff Thompson, Executive Vice President for the University of Nevada, Reno. And the answer is absolutely. And it's from our faculty members who are working in the area and have expertise, to our graduates who are also part of this process, but also as in a consultative area. Our faculty have a lot of connections with these industries, and they ask us questions, and it's a way for us to have a dialogue and engage with the technologies going forward, because this is a very rapidly changing and innovative industry at the moment. There's still a lot that we are learning as we move forward. So absolutely, whether it's Professor Falls or other people, we have worked in this space for a long time and continue to do so. And again, sometimes we're working with our own graduates as we're having these discussions. So we are. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's just great to know that Nevada will be like the world leader in things that are going on in the future. And then my other question is a little bit more specific. On one of the slides, you mentioned that we are still 66% short of the estimated U.S. requirements for the lithium for 2030. Does that incorporate any of the recycling, or do we know what what the plans are, or what our return will be on recycling, and if that will have any balance on this need?
So thank you for the question, and this is a little bit about outside of my expertise, but from having discussions with the recyclers. They are developing technologies as they are recycling. And then the other piece is the actual feedstock. Where are they getting the materials to recycle? Some of it is coming from the Tesla plant for batteries that do not meet quality control, and then they are recycling them. And some of it is coming from handheld devices, power tools, and things as we go forward. So that industry is, again, developing new technologies and new processes, but they're ahead of the recycling for automobile batteries at the moment.
Thank you. That just made me think, I know, like you can go to certain zoos and bring your phone and drop your phone in so that they could do that. Should we as a state be creating some sort of more vibrant recycling with anything that has any of these precious metal things so that we can help push this recycling forward?
So again, I'm not the expert, but for the record, Jeff Thompson, Executive Vice President and Provost, a lot of the recycling, for example, redwood materials, comes from those bins. And so anything I think as a state that we could encourage the recycling would certainly support the recycling industry in our state.
Okay, thank you so much. I think you heard we really enjoyed the presentation. It's always wonderful to hear what the universities in the state are doing to prepare the next generation of our workforce and to ensure that we're taking advantage of these industries. So thank you so much for the presentation. And with that, we will close out item number 9 on the agenda, which was our last presentation related to lithium and lithium mining. We thank you again, and we also thank you for coming down to Southern Nevada for this. And we are going to move on to item number 10. Our final presentation for today on wildlife crossings. Mr. Nicholas Calero, Senior Officer with the Pew Charitable Trust, is presenting from Las Vegas, and we thank you so very much for joining us today. Please introduce yourself and spell your name for the record when you're ready to begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Kyle Davis today on behalf of the Pew Charitable Trust. Thank you for having us here today. We are really looking forward to talking about this issue with this committee. I want to thank the members of the committee and members of the legislature in general. Last session, the legislature unanimously approved AB 112 that invested resources in this issue, and we're here to talk about what's going on with that and what we can see on the horizon when it comes to this issue. So with that, I will turn things over to my colleague, Mr. Calero, and he will walk you through it.
Chair Pizzina, members of the committee, good afternoon. For the record, my name is Nick Calero with the Pew Charitable Trust. That's NICCALLERO. I want to thank the committee for the invitation to speak to you today about an issue that's very important to Nevada. The last time I spoke on the issue of wildlife crossings to the legislature was during the 2023 session in support of Assembly Bill 112, which successfully created Nevada's wildlife crossing account. I know that that bill was supported by many of the people in this room, so I want to thank you for that. Today I wanted to revisit the same subject matter, update the committee on progress, and discuss how Nevada can continue to lead on this issue. Again, my name is Nick Calero with the Pew Charitable Trust. For those who may not be familiar with Pew, our U.S. conservation program seeks to sustain biodiversity and resilient ecosystems by collaborating with policymakers, communities, tribes, and many others. We work with stakeholders to improve public policy using new science and research. The identification and protection of wildlife migration corridors is an important part of our work. So there are two primary threads that I'm going to be touching on throughout this short slide deck. The first being wildlife vehicle collisions impacts on people. The second being vehicle collision impacts, the second being how busy roads and highways impact wildlife and habitat. Now, each year, according to the Nevada Department of Transportation, more than 500 reported wildlife vehicle collisions occur in the state, costing the state close to $20 million. Now, there's a significant caveat with that 500 number in that collisions with deer and other large animals are notoriously underreported, and NDOT actually estimates that less than 10% of these collisions are actually reported in the state, which would make that 500 number closer to 5,000 wildlife vehicle collisions annually in Nevada. To add a bit of perspective to that 5,000 number, the majority of those collisions are with mule deer. Last year, in 2023, according to NDOW, the total number of mule deer legally harvested by hunters was under 3,500 animals. So if you compare those two numbers, you can see just how large of an impact vehicle collisions, specifically on mule deer, are having on an annual basis throughout the state. Now, these collisions have a monetary cost to society. NDOT actually partnered on some research in 2022 that priced out the average collision cost by species. And you can see here on that bullet, the average national cost of a single deer collision is upwards of $20,000, elk upwards of $75,000, and a moose collision closer to $110,000. On the habitat side, these linear infrastructure like roads fragment habitat and migration routes, limiting access to important habitat. Multiple different studies and research show that habitat fragmentation can reduce biodiversity by up to 75%, and climate change is exacerbating these impacts. Thankfully, there is a solution, and it's a solution that Nevada is very familiar with, that being wildlife crossings. Wildlife crossings are highly effective at reducing crashes. We know this. They improve safety for animals and humans alike, and they facilitate essential wildlife movement, making herds more resilient in the face of climate change. Wildlife crossings connect habitat and facilitate critical ecological processes. In addition to improving habitat connectivity, properly sited wildlife crossings reduce collisions by up to 90%. And we need to look no further than here in Nevada on Highway 93 near Elko, which was the state's first project specifically for wildlife. Post-construction monitoring found that over 35,000 mule deer used that structure in its first 4 years, resulting in a significant reduction in wildlife vehicle collisions. To date, more than 120,000 crossings by mule deer have occurred on that one structure. And if you think about it, that's 120,000 times that an animal was removed from the roadway, making that road safer for people traveling through, as well as connecting important habitat for migrating wildlife. The last point here is wildlife crossings are a sound investment. They pay for themselves. Based on the overall societal cost, which I mentioned on that previous slide, properly sited wildlife crossings and associated fencing will pay for themselves in the long run. They are a sound investment. Now, Nevada does continue to lead on this issue on a variety of fronts. On the construction side, Nevada has a long history of leadership. They have 79 animal crossings in place for both large and small animals, including 6 overpasses. On the policy side, Nevada continues to lead as well. I mentioned Assembly Bill 112, which passed in the 2023 legislative session, which created Nevada's first wildlife crossing account, as well as a $5 million investment into that account, which is a significant step, significant framework to build on into the future. And then I'll also mention on the research and data side, Nevada continues to lead. They're leading the way on mapping migration corridors with GPS collars. NDOW continues to lead the way in working closely with the Department of Transportation in identifying these hotspot locations where new wildlife crossings will most benefit road safety and habitat connectivity. Despite this, there does remain challenges, and those challenges are in regards to funding. State governments struggle to obtain adequate funding sources for managing and maintaining existing infrastructure, which can impact the ability to pursue new standalone wildlife-friendly transportation infrastructure projects. And I'll touch on this last point in the next few slides, but developing a dedicated fund at the state level would better position Nevada in a variety of different ways, specifically in attracting additional federal funding to leverage for these projects. This momentum is not unique to Nevada, as neighboring states across the West are taking action on this issue. In the last 2 years, state legislatures in California, Colorado, New Mexico, Oregon, Utah, and Wyoming passed new laws to conserve and restore habitat connectivity and invest general fund dollars to build new wildlife crossings. And Pew actually has a unique perspective here in that we worked very closely with partners on the ground as well as policymakers to get many of those bills in those states I just mentioned across the finish line. And there is a legitimate momentum around this issue, and that momentum is driven by the science provided by the Department of Wildlife on where these animals are moving across the landscape and where there are hotspot collision locations. But it's also driven by the availability of these federal funds, specifically a new program called the Wildlife Crossing Pilot Program, which kicked loose $350 million for states to take advantage of. And so this momentum exists. Nevada stands to be able to take advantage of it, maintain its position as a national leader on this issue by prioritizing the allocation of the dedicated funding that would feed into that wildlife crossing account that was created last year in the upcoming 2025 legislative session. So what is needed? And I just mentioned this. Securing a dedicated funding stream for wildlife crossings would help on a variety of fronts. It would make Nevada more competitive for matching federal funding, while also providing certainty for long-term planning, which would accelerate construction of these projects, making roads safer for people and wildlife. While that $5 million investment from the last legislative session is a fantastic start to build on, it's important to remember that that's a one-time appropriation and that these projects are expensive and need additional funds for planning into the future. Got a few slides left here. On this slide, I just want to mention in 2022, Pew commissioned a study titled Revenue Options for Wildlife Crossings by an economics firm, which analyzed a dozen state revenue options that have a proven track record of success for funding transportation and conservation projects across the West. This analysis studied and ranked each of these potential funding options on a variety of different issues. I have a slide here that's just a collection of a few of those, and I'll just mention up front that not all of these options would be a perfect fit for Nevada. The point here was to start a conversation, to spur some ideas with policymakers on what could potentially be a good fit for Nevada looking into the future, looking at ways to provide a dedicated stream of funds into that wildlife crossing account to make roads safer while simultaneously connecting habitat for migrating wildlife. And this is my last slide here. I want to thank Chair Pezzina, thank the committee for the opportunity to speak here today. And I'll just mention there were a lot of numbers and references to studies on those slides that I just presented. If any of those by chance jumped out to you, feel free to mention that. I'm happy to connect that study with you or even connect you directly to the source. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really enjoyed the presentation, and I believe we do have a question in Southern Nevada with Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. I love these. I think they're so fascinating, and we're being good stewards of the land by keeping our wildlife safe. So we in Nevada have been, we're not great about getting grants. We're doing better, but we're just not there. And so really leveraging that money that's available. I guess my question is, do you have a specific number that we should get to or specific things that maybe we're missing so we can make sure to leverage that money? Because I would love to see those dollars come here.
Nick Calero for the record. Chair Pezzina, Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod, thank you for that question. The answer is yes. And one of the points on one of the slides I mentioned there that I didn't dive deeper into due to time is the need for additional staff capacity for the Department of Wildlife as well as the Department of Transportation to work on this issue. There is a significant amount of federal funding available on this issue as well as a variety of other issues that relate to this, specifically coming from the bipartisan infrastructure law that's available right now. additional staff capacity to apply for those grants to make sure that those grant applications are solid would be a significant step. And I'll stop there. I don't know if the Department of Transportation is available to answer that question as well. It'd be a very good question for them to touch on also.
This is Nova Simpson, NOVA-SIMPSON with the Nevada Department of Transportation. These structures are very expensive, costing in the millions of dollars, depending on the road that we're going over, as well as a lot of the different planning aspects that come with it. So, you know, I cannot advocate for anything in any direction, but I am here to answer questions and just talk about some of the different details that you might need for your consideration.
Ms. Simpson, while you're there, we were curious if you might have a priority listing from NDOT for crossings.
Yes, Nova Simpson. We are currently working on a new prioritization process. We do have one that we looked at primarily with respect to crash data, but our new process is looking at not only crash data, but the conservation value. So looking at habitat connectivity, looking at critical habitat, endangered species, different things from the ecological side are being integrated into this. And we're also taking a new innovative approach and integrating disturbance. So potential urban expansion, mining, solar, et cetera, as well as climate change. And so what will be effective not only now, but into the future as we start to see some of those trends in climate. So we hope to have that done by the end of this calendar year, but we are looking at our prior one related more to crashes as we investigate every project moving into our planning processes at the DOT level.
Thank you. I'm sure more questions may arise, but I did want to turn it over to Assemblyman DeLong, who had a question for our presenter.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a quick question. Of the $5 million that was allocated in the last budget, how much of that has been spent to date?
Chair Pazina, Assemblyman DeLong, my understanding is that that money is still there in that account waiting to be spent, but I can turn that over to Nova Simpson to verify.
Yes, Nova Simpson, NDOT. So we have been really working towards getting ready to spend that money appropriately. Going back to the prioritization, we really want to make sure that we're using those funds in the best locations given limited funds are available. We have applied for some grants. Unfortunately, we did not receive the Wildlife Crossing pilot program, but we are still waiting to hear on the RAISE funds. If we do receive those grants, we will be using part of that for that. But we are using NDOT environmental service funds to help us with some of the prior planning that's required for all of this, especially that prioritization. We have a big consultant team. So we're trying to leave that alone until we are ready to use it on structures.
Thank you very much.
I believe Assemblyman Gurr also has a question.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering the difference between using the under road crossings versus the overhead crossings, and possibly what history you could tell me about the costs of the 2 on 93 versus the costs on 80 on the Pequops and Silver Zone. And maybe that's the Department of Wildlife to ask. I don't know. But
yeah, Nova Simpson. So it just depends on a lot of factors based on like construction costs of the time. So a great example is the 93, where we were at a pretty low time in our economy. And so we got those really great rates included with the larger project. Those were around about $1 million for the underpasses. The overpasses ran anywhere from $1.5 to $2 million. Then fast forward to times where costs are a lot higher. Our most recent structures that were put in on I-80, so 4 to 5 lanes of traffic back in 18, those were around $10 million a piece. Fast forward to now, we can probably estimate those costs have probably close to doubled. And so it just really depends on one, if it's being piggybacked with a larger construction project, and are those costs absorbed with the larger project? Are they standalone? And economic times and supplies. So there's a lot of variability that we've seen over the last 10 plus years with the construction of our structures.
Thank you for that. What about usability by the wildlife for the underground versus the overpasses? Is there anything that anybody, I would guess the wildlife department's done a study on that, but I haven't seen any numbers in the last few years about what they're doing and what their usage is versus the underground are going to be a lot less expensive. The overheads are very costly, especially when you're going over 80.
Yes, Nova Simpson. So yeah, it just depends on the species and what they are more adaptable to. And so like some species adapt to the underpasses very well, such as mule deer do very, very well with the underpasses, assuming there's certain design features included. Whereas other species like pronghorn are not keen to use those kinds of structures, and they would require an overpass. So we're looking at a variety of things as we investigate these. The most recent studies is Boulder City Bypass, where we have an overpass and several large bridge underpasses, primarily for bighorn sheep. To my knowledge, we've still had 0 hits on that, which is amazing for any kind of project. But it was thought that bighorn didn't like underpasses prior to our project. And we've actually found, given the large scale of the big structures that we have there, they're actually bedding down and creating a little microhabitat in the shade during the heat months of those large bridges. So again, it's very specific to the target species and what kind of conditions are with those structures, whether they're smaller, larger, more open, et cetera.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Senator Gokachia?
Just a quick comment, and we're getting close to lunch, so I need to get out of here. But anyway, this is to NDOT as well. But as you know, you are required on most of these highways and freeway systems to do the right-of-way fencing. And I think we need to be looking at that and make those fences a little higher and use them to direct, that wildlife. 2 points where, again, where underground existing crossings will work, especially culverts. In northern Nevada, if you have a cow herd on one side of 80, you don't holler across that freeway. You take her underneath in existing drainages, and wildlife will adapt to that as well in some areas. So again, you got to fence the right of way instead of building 4-foot game-friendly fences. Let's make them 6 foot, so you in fact keep the animals off the freeways. As we're looking at this, you've got 6 overpasses and 73 underpasses. Again, with fencing, I think you can utilize some more of those existing boxes. We need to get them off the highways. Let's be the most cost-effective we can. Again, I know this presentation is about, okay, how do we get more money in that pot to keep matching federal dollars? But coming out of the north, where we run over a lot more of them than other places than you do downtown here on the Strip, it is an issue, and we need to fix it. Thank you. There's a bigger penalty for running over one, too.
Thank you so much. We really appreciated the presentation. I don't believe we have any further comments or questions, but we thank you so much again, Mr. Calero, for your presentation. Mr. Davis, any final comments?
I don't. Thank you for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. With that, we are going to close item 10 on the agenda and move to our final period of public comment. If you'd like to call in, please dial 888-475-4499. When prompted, please enter meeting ID 885-0796-8134, and then press pound. Broadcast and production services will indicate to you when it is your turn to speak. When you are ready to speak, please clearly state your name and spell your name for the record and limit your comment to 2 minutes. And we are going to start here in Las Vegas. All right, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Pazina. My name is Nick Christensen, Christenson. I'm very pleased that the committee chose to hear about wildlife crossings today, especially after the passage of AB 112 in the last session. I'd like to bring a matter to the committee's attention that may improve the effectiveness of some of these crossings. As everyone is likely aware, NV Energy is planning on building 2 new long-distance transmission lines through Nevada as part of the GreenLink project. The first runs along the US 95 right away between Las Vegas and Fallon, and the second runs near US 50, roughly between Ely and Fallon. These are 2 highways that I expect to be potential locations for wildlife crossings. Along these transmission lines, NV Energy will be building electrical substations. These substations will be a magnet for industrial-scale solar farms, as every solar developer will want to install their acres of solar panels as near to these substations as possible, as this will minimize their costs. These solar farms will likely be fenced in such a way as to route large animals around their panels rather than among them. And of course, what type of fencing they're going to use is going to be critical in their effectiveness in this manner, as Senator Gokachia pointed out. It seemed to me that this presents an opportunity that it might be beneficial to look into siting wildlife crossings near these substations along these routes, and that there may be considerable advantage to laying out the fencing boundaries of these solar farms such that they encourage the preferential use of these crossings by wildlife. Consequently, I would hope that NDOT, and the BLM, along with the developers of these solar sites, would be able to get together and discuss how they might work in conjunction to optimally design crossing and fencing near these solar farms in such a way as to minimize the number of animals killed, the amount of property damage, and potentially the number of lives lost on our roadways, and would encourage this body to work with these organizations to try to make these more effective. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Christensen. Seeing no one else in Las Vegas, do we have anyone who'd like to approach the table in Carson City? If so, please approach the table and be ready to speak. Introduce yourself and state and spell your name when ready.
Hi, members of the committee. My name is Cassandra Lisenby, Kassandra Lisenbee. I want to speak to you today as an individual, not as a representative of GBRW. I'm highly aware of the nuanced conversation of mining. My great-grandma moved to Lamoille, Nevada in 1930. She used to write activism letters in the town under a pen name because it was so scary to question the industry. This is something that has gotten better, but I am aware of the nuance of this industry. My grandpa was a miner for Newmont for over 30 years, and he's now very sick. And so there is economics here, but there is people and there is health, and we deserve a right to question and to push on how we make things better for our communities. We've heard about things like modern mining, but we're also hearing about new technologies. A lot of our abandoned mines come from this modern, what was at the time considered modern mining. So they are still things that we need to be cautious and be thinking about as we are moving forward. We talk about economics in rural communities, but I have seen many of my friends lose multi-generational ranches as mines come in and buy up all the water rights in the area. Mines usually operate for about 40 to 50 years, usually 2 to 3 generations. And then we see the boom and bust cycle of mining happening here with a lot of our abandoned towns. We also see mines like Pumpkin Hollow. We heard a little bit about economic stability of mine sites, but mines are highly susceptible to mineral prices of the economic abilities as well of the global economy. We see places like Pumpkin Hollow in Yerington that open and close depending on the price of the minerals. So this is another consideration when we talk about long-term stability for our communities. My own personal research has shown that in the Crescent Valley water basin, I estimate approximately...
Ma'am, we've gone almost 3 minutes.
Oh
and
gosh,
so
thank
we can
you for
continue if
cutting
you
me
don't
off.
mind just
Yes, I'll
no
wrap
worries,
it up
if you don't
right
mind
now.
Just closing it up for us. Thank you so much.
I'll wrap it up, which is just to say that there is a nuance to these conversations, and I implore you to listen to more directly affected and tribal nations while having these conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. And if we have someone else, yep, go ahead and begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committees, members. Denny French, Carson City. Wow, I couldn't follow the person any more perfectly set for me to say ditto, 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 ditto. Her insights, her research far outweighs mine. But I can tell you something about my observation about today, besides the fact that I've appreciated each of the committees listening to things like the water matter that I came to weeks ago, things like now with the mining, the considerations of lithium and such. The economic aspects that were just brought up definitely are important, but the nuances are equally. And in my case, I did not hear the Intertribal Council of Nevada's presentation was amazing. The wildlife crossing touched me. I'm more of an ecosystem person. The fight to save Ash, Meadows, and Death Valley, huge. What I failed to see here was that we were learning from the mines that exist now. Asia, Australia, China are the main resources at this point. United States is stepping into something that has not, I feel, been completely vetted. First off, lithium is not just the only material in the batteries, and it has not proven itself to be as stable as they'd hoped, nor as easily mined as suggested. I'd like to have this committee and ensure myself to look into what already exists as some mining practices in those locations that we are exploiting right now for the fact that we haven't got our own. I don't want us to step into a field of endeavor without really understanding the place lithium has in our world. Many studies that I've looked at, and I am no scientist by any means, but you can even Google it. The basics for the wordage and the way to get in further, and then from there it goes, wow, talk about a rabbit hole. But it suggests that it's not the end, be-all, end-all. In fact, many countries are looking away.
Mr. French, you're getting closer to 2.5
I'll
minutes.
wrap
If you'd
it
like to
up.
close up with a thought, we'd love to have you share it.
I'd love to have all of you look deeper. What we're having sold to us right now is an easy sale. It suggests we're going to have everything fixed, and I believe it's just the start of our questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, Broadcast Production Services. Do we have anyone on the line for us?
Yes, Chair, thank you. If you would like to participate in public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, committee members. Fred Volz for the record, V as in Victor, OLTZ. You have previously heard about how undemocratic, unrepresentative, and unconcerned the State Wildlife Commission and the State Department of Wildlife are towards representing the best interests of wildlife species and the overwhelming number of Nevadans who don't buy their licenses. Further proof of the overdue need for a complete review and study happened at the May 22nd Finance Committee meeting of the Wildlife Commission. NRS Section 501.3032A requires attendance at all commission meetings by representatives from all county advisory boards, or CABs. There are no statutory exemptions. Each county is supposed to have a CAB. Esmeralda and Story do not. Despite these black letter law requirements, the Finance Committee continues to propose and the Wildlife Commission continues to approve funding for the cabs when most do not meet locally, do not incur expense, and or do not consistently show up at commission meetings. On average, only a random 6 out of 17 appear at commission meetings. What employer pays an employee for non-existent work? What employee reasonably expects to be paid when the employee performs no work for the employer? The tacit acceptance of funding in exchange for non-performance, both by the counties and by the Wildlife Commission, verges on fraud to the public. We need the study. Thank you.
Thank you so much. BPS, our next caller, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name and spell it for the record and then continue.
Thank you. My name is John Hatter, Hadder. I'm the director of Great Basin Resource Watch. Thank you very much, committee members today, for listening to all the comments and presentations. You know, Great Basin Resource Watch, we would also like to see a true circular economy. But let's be clear about what is a circular economy. True circularity means that there is zero waste and that all materials are reused. So to develop a circular lithium economy, which has also been referred to loosely as a lithium loop, we need to develop new technologies that are fully reusable and recyclable. Thus, the need for raw input materials should decrease over time, including mining. In addition, the economy needs to adhere to green chemistry principles so that we are not only minimizing inputs, but we are also using biologically and environmentally non-harmful materials. We also need to adhere to the principles of environmental, social, and environmental justice. This means that disproportionately affected peoples need to be at the forefront. Discussions of streamlining permitting should not mean reduced engagement of the directly affected people and the public. Furthermore, engagement needs to be meaningful, which allows for an avenue for directly affected people and the public to have a say in what is permitted. This also means that there needs to be increased transparency so that communities and the general public are fully aware of what is being proposed and the consequences of these projects, whether a mine project or other aspects of the lithium loop. Never is there a time to fast-track, expedite mine permitting, even for lithium and other energy transition minerals. If anything, we should be more careful, since each mine further erodes the ability of the planet to regulate climate. Expediting is a step backwards, which will accept incompletely analyzed mine plans that allow avoidable environmental damage and run over concerns of directly affected communities. We need only look at the permitting process for the Thacker Pass lithium mine that triggered 3 lawsuits and highly
Mr. Hatter, we're
frontline
over 2
communities.
minutes. If you'd like to close out your comments, and thank you.
Thank you very much for this time and for the committee's attention and for your service to the state of Nevada. Bye now.
Thank you so much. And as a reminder to all speakers, once the 2 minutes is concluded, you're always welcome to submit your comments to the Interim Natural Resources Committee as well to go on to the public record. And with that, I believe we might have one more caller, BPS.
Thank you, Chair. There are no other callers wishing to offer public comment at this time.
All right. So with that said, seeing no one else coming to the front in Las Vegas, is there anyone else in Carson City? Okay. Seeing no one else coming to the front in Carson City or in Las Vegas, we are going to close out item number 11 on our agenda, public comment. And before we adjourn, one last announcement. As mentioned at our last meeting, it is time to consider which bill draft requests we want to put forward as a committee for the next legislative session. If you have BDR ideas or bill draft request ideas that you'd like to suggest for consideration, please submit your recommendation along with appropriate background information by Wednesday, July the 31st at 5 p.m. Additional instructions and a form for submitting BDRs that includes information to help us consider these recommendations may be found on the legislative website on the committee's webpage. Committee members, please feel free to reach out to me and staff directly with ideas. Our next meeting will be held on Friday, August the 23rd, and this will be the committee's last meeting as well as our work session. I am planning to chair from Carson City for this meeting. And with that said, this meeting is adjourned.